Gonna. Well, hello, friendly people everywhere. It is me and Dr. Ron, our resident friendly neighborhood hydrologist. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Let's give me some shout outs. Hello, Nicole. Hello, Augie. Hello, Oracle. Hello, everybody. Let's see, Max. And we have a couple people who are new. Some people, as Bill Manning. Some people said that they finally made one. Others, Robert Moore from the UK. Good morning to you, sir. What a trooper to be in here. Let's see. Vancouver PD. I'm just saying. Max is in the chat. Hello, Max. How are you, buddy? I don't have anything to say to you about combat veterans who are paratroopers, Max. So don't ask. Let's see. Lou B. the Third says he is the only 18-year-old in here. Actually, Max is 18, I believe. Max is graduating high school this year. So, hey, Steve. Steve Hart, what's up, man? Nicholas Augusta. Okay, everybody. All right. Listen. So today we got Ron with us, and we're just going to talk about Tena frigging Bar, which whenever I am asked about Tena Bar, the joke is I always say, no habla inglés, because I do not like this topic. Oh, wow. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. 20 pounds. That's like 85 US dollars with the exchange rate it is. Thank you, Communist Doge. That's really generous of you. I appreciate that. So, but yeah, basically Tena Bar is the mystery within the mystery. Obviously, for those who are sort of new to the case, essentially, I believe it was February 12th, 1980. Young Brian Ingram is messing around on the beach with his family. They're at a hot dog. They're roasting weenies and doing things like this. They're from Arkansas originally, and they move up there. And young Brian is there's a photo of Brian digging in the sand. About the same age. And Brian was digging in the sand, and his arm brushed over some money. And he said it just popped out. And it was in 3 packets, essentially, that were sort of rubber banded loosely together, which is how the money was delivered to Cooper. Although he found 3 packets bundled together, and the money that was given to Cooper was 5 packets. Make of that what you will. So where's the missing $4,000? But at any rate, yeah, so Brian finds the money on Tena Bar, and this place here, right in the middle of this image, is where he found it. This is an FBI photo from the day that they show up. This is before the FBI start digging, actually. They had the presence of mind to at least take a photo before they started tearing the beach up. And right in the center of it, it says, is where the money was found. And you can see the Ingram family had torn up the beach themselves looking for more money because, hey, treasure found on the beach. So the money ends up looking like this. It's degraded. Some of the bills are more or less are about that size. They're very tiny, and they're eaten up with all kinds of whatever. They're just rotted to pieces, but they're still kind of soggy, I guess. I don't know if they're wet, but they had rubber bands on them, and the rubber bands immediately flaked away. But this is a big shot there of the beach. The yellow marker is where that photo was taken, right there, that yellow spot there. So this is really about 30 feet from the beach, from the shoreline, where we find this money. But anyways, my guest is Ron Ransic, who is I don't guess there's such a thing as a river hydrologist, although that's what you would call yourself.
No, not really. I mean, yeah, hydrologist or water resources engineer probably is. Hydrologist means a lot of things. I'd call myself a hydrologist.
But your specialty is rivers as opposed to like oceans, right?
Not oceans, yeah. It's surface water, rivers and streams and that sort of thing. More than the coast or more than underground. You know, you got your groundwater hydrologist too.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me.
Well, then money can degrade within a year. Yes, it can. Do you think the money was burnt? Looks burnt. No, it doesn't. It wasn't burnt, I don't think. But anyway, so Ron and his wife have been to Cooper Con the past couple years, and basically when we met Ron last year, we had no idea he was a hydrologist, and a hydrologist just happened to fall into our lap this way, which is incredible. We have a hydrologist who is now a card-carrying member of the vortex. I would say. I mean, he really is. It's a mystery that you can't escape this Cooper thing. It gets you. It'll bite you. But basically, he gave a speech or a presentation at CooperCon, and for those of you who weren't at CooperCon, he's going to give it again for all of you guys. So, Ron, I am going to rest my voice, and you can take it away, sir.
I will. My wife kind of lured me into this, Ryan. She would feed me questions like, "Oh, could money sink so it can't move down a river, right?" Yeah, sure it can. What are you talking about? And I didn't know what she's talking about, or she'd sort of feed me these little questions, and I would answer. And by the time I showed up at my first CooperCon, I got to the the check-in there. The day you get your hang tag or whatever they put around your neck. And I think it was Chris Cunningham was there, and he's like, "Oh, you're the hydrologist." I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
How do you do I look like a hydrologist? How did you know that?" And so, right off the bat, I was arguing about really my expertise. Like, I don't know anything about Cooper or what he was up to, but certain aspects of like how the money got to Tena Bar or how it got buried in Tena Bar are just plain like hydrology and river hydraulics. And I'm like, well, this could have happened. That probably didn't happen. And that doesn't make sense. This does make sense. And so I sort of got lured right into it. So, but I can start. Let's pull up a slide instead of looking at us.
Yeah.
Is that going to work? How do
Oh, wait. I got to add it. My bad. There we go.
Okay, there we go. So this is not Tena Bar. This is what's the next one upstream?
Frenchman's Bar. A Frenchman's Bar, yes. Frenchman's Bar, yes.
Frenchman's Bar. It's just this might have been closer to what Tena Bar looked like back in the day. It's this is like a couple of miles at most from Tena Bar. Tena Bar is kind of washed away in the years since the money was found and since Cooper might have hidden the money there or whatever. So, and I didn't want to go and get permission to go to Tena Bar because with the sand being gone and it's washed away, it didn't seem all that exciting. So I went to Frenchman's Bar, which is like County Park upstream. It's a nice spot. But Frenchman's Bar is absolutely not secret or hidden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a regional park of some sort, and I don't think Tena Bar was either. A lot of people tell you it's like only it was the remote, inaccessible place on the river. It was not, and in general, there's no remote, inaccessible places. If you're into fishing or hunting for mushrooms or all, then people are everywhere. They're crawling through every bush in the continental U.S. and most of Alaska. So anyway, so I was the first speaker at CooperCon this year, so I thought I better give some kind of outline. I wasn't sure if there'd be anything before me, so I started with this brief outline, and Ryan, you're probably like rolling your eyes. Oh my God, you're missing something. I was thought when you write this out, you think the people who are really into it they're gonna get aggravated. But anyway, the Flight 305 departs PDX for Seattle. Guy who called himself Dan Cooper hands a note and says he has a bomb and he asks for money, parachutes, and fuels. So they land in Seattle. He gets what he demanded, more or less. Flight heads supposedly for Mexico, but they decide they're going to go to Reno. And Cooper is seen with the parachutes. And this is part of what I was trying to make a point. Like so much of what happened at Tena Bar is a series of assumptions. And they start with, we know Cooper was seen examining the parachutes. He was rigging up the money, I guess, is what Tina saw him do. But she's not 100% sure what was in his head. He was just tying the money up in a bag. And then he's gone, right? Plane lands in Reno. Cooper, the money, and all of Cooper's stuff is gone without a trace. And we assume he jumped. He had a parachute and he's gone. But do we really know he jumped? I guess he could have fallen. But I was just trying to make the point that you start with that assumption, which seems pretty safe, that he was wearing a parachute and he's gone from the plane. He probably jumped, but even that's an assumption. And from there on, they just get assumption on assumption, and they're wilder and wilder guesses before you get to 8 years later, $6,000 of the money is found in Tena Bar. Like, how many assumptions or guesses or unknowns had to happen between the airplane and Tena Bar? It's too many, whatever the number is, it's too many. We can't really kind of hope to solve that. But anyway, that's 8 years later, $6,000 is found buried in Tena Bar. That part we know. That's the other So we know he was on the plane. We know the money's in Tena Bar. In between, it's just speculation. But one of the things, as I'm an engineer, and my background's in science. One of the things you do know about natural science is I can tell you what rivers do. I can tell you what sandbars are like. I can't tell you what people are doing. I don't know half the time why I do things I do, let alone anybody else. But I do know what rivers do. It's pretty well documented. So, the short story is water could move the money to Tena Bar, but that part has been disputed. Could the money move down the river? Sure, absolutely it could. But the river would not bury the money in sand the way it was found. There's no physical process that makes any sense. That river processes leave evidence. That's the whole science of geology and geomorphology, and even to some extent like archaeology. You're looking at these deposits and you can infer what happened. When you look at the Tena Bar money, which sadly was not excavated by any kind of scientist, the FBI were using, it looks like rototillers at times. I don't know what they're doing, but the evidence is certainly there. You look at what we do know, and boy, no flowing stream did this. That's clear, right? So anyway,
let's pause right there, because that's a huge, massive statement there. Okay, we have a trained hydrologist, people, who is saying that money will not bury itself. A bundle of money is not going to bury itself. What are we looking at? This was my stupid calculation here. About 30-ish feet. They're standing. The guy. You can see people kind of leaning over right there at the top. That's right where the money is. And I didn't know how far that was, so I took this guy in the white with his hands in his back pockets, and I just I assumed he was about 6 feet. So because he looks a little tall. So I just laid him end to end to see how far that is, and it's about 30 feet. So a hydrologist is saying that money is not going to leap 30 feet from a shoreline.
And actually, Ryan, I'm going to disagree with you. That is not the point I'm making.
Okay.
I don't care how far it was from because there's a bunch of things to keep in mind. One is the river goes up and down. So the shoreline moves.
Yeah.
And this is tidal. If you look at this picture, you see how they're standing. The water has a wet zone of sand. This must be a falling tide. The tide has fallen a little bit, exposing, and there's a tidal signature in the river at this site. It goes the whole way up to Portland. You can see it in the tide gauge on the I-5, which is a few miles upstream from here. So not only does it rise and fall seasonally and so forth, but it rises and falls twice a day with the tides.
Right.
A couple of feet. So you can actually see the tide dropping in this photo. It's kind of cool. Yeah. But the reason I'm saying it's not buried is a little more subtle than that.
Okay.
But let's go on. Let's
go on.
All right. So this was CooperCon. I was just trying to show, and this is from that online, the interactive map. I don't like the way the colors turned out, but you can see I put the green dot there. I don't know if you can see my cursor. That green dot is Tena Bar, right? Okay. And the flight path is in red, right? And Ryan's looked at all kinds of these, but the plane didn't fly over Tena Bar is the basic point of this. It didn't fly really anywhere near Tena Bar. And the jump zone, and you can see I've outlined in sort of, somebody outlined on this rough zone outline in orange kind of line there that shows the drop zone. That was one of the popular versions of the drop zone, right? From about 812 to 813 was when he jumped, and that's where the plane was, right?
Yep.
The point of this slide was that if there's a river there, right?
Yep.
And sure, right in the middle of the drop zone is a river. Money falls in the river. Absolutely could be moved by water. I don't care if it sinks. That doesn't matter. But that river does run to the Columbia, but it runs to the Columbia well downstream. The Columbia here is running south to north. So that where that enters the Columbia is downstream. So, even if the money fell in that river, it ends up a couple of miles downstream of Tena Bar. It's not working its way upstream. It's not a fish, not a salmon coming upstream. It's going down to the ocean. So that's the first big problem with um, money arriving on Tena Bar, right? Yes, water can move money. It moves lots of things that are a lot heavier than money, including the sand of Tena Bar itself, right? Either Tena Bar originally, the sand was brought there by the river, and in recent years, it's being removed by the river. Sand is a lot more dense and harder to move than money. So the fact that sand's moving around means money could move around. That's not that was one of the, you still see it on the vortex discussions about, oh, money sinks, it couldn't have moved in the river. Sure it could.
Mhm.
Logs, waterlogged logs, I mean, money, dead bodies, all kinds of stuff moves down the river. Water can move almost anything if the water's moving fast enough. But the problem is the water's going the wrong direction. It's not coming from the drop zone to Tena Bar. So that's one of your simple problems. But you do, I mean, and I think it was Edwards' book had a whole theory about this. The flight path, you see, it comes, from that landing zone I've at about 812 and 813. It comes and makes a turn just south of Vancouver and across Portland. So sure, if you somehow think the money was on the plane until that point, and it could have been dropped in the Columbia. The plane did fly over the Columbia, right?
Right.
It doesn't. All evidence points that the money and Cooper were gone by that time, but nevertheless, there is at least some kind of theory
Sure.
that money was dropped here, or I think it's the Willamette River. You see just above on my screen, just above my head, there's the Willamette coming in from the west, right? And the plane flew over the Willamette. Sure, money falls in the Willamette. It could absolutely get washed down by the river. The problem with money moving down a river is it sinks, as has been pointed out many times. It's going to move along the bottom. It's going to sort of bounce along the bottom with the current, and that makes it subject to getting stuck. And so one bundle of money put in the river would move as water moves, but it's going to have to make its way through all of the rocks and log jams and everything else that wants to catch it. And more than likely, that money is going to end up in a pile of things of similar density. It's going to end up in a pile of waterlogged wood and leaves, which are all over every river. And if that's where the money would found, you'd be like, okay, sure, it moved from upstream like all this other junk, and now it all got caught up in one of the places things get caught in rivers. That's not what we see though. When the money was found, it was just the money buried in sand, right? So there's the first kind of line of evidence I have is that how did just money end up in just sand? It wasn't like money in a log jam, money in a pile of leaves, money in a pile of,
Right.
a lot of trash that ends up in rivers is of similar density as money. It should have. How did that money get separated from all the similar stuff if it was moving down the river?
That's a good point.
It's not proof. There's a lot of things in natural processes like this. That, if you went out in the woods, Ryan, you found sticks laid out on the floor that said Cooper money and a little arrow made of sticks.
Mhm.
Can you prove that wasn't the way the sticks fell out of the trees? You
Right.
can't. It could have happened. I don't think so, but it
Mhm.
could have, right? And that's kind of where I would go with the money, like ending up by itself without any
Hmm.
other organic stuff around. How did that? What made the money stop there, and no leaves and no sticks and no twigs ended up stopping as well? I mean, it's not impossible, but it starts to get pretty far fetched. So that was where I was going here. Here's what I thought was I was happy. It took me a while to come up with a slide of trying to explain. So money does end up on the beach. I'm going to skip a slide. So I'm going to skip ahead here. This is actually a photo. It's not a very good photo, Ryan. You probably have better ones. This is a photo of Tena Bar from 1971 or something. And if you notice, there's sand and there's a bunch of stuff on the beach, logs, and probably some of those are no longer float very well. They're waterlogged, but stuff does end up on the beach, and that seems like a very plausible thing for money to end up on the beach, right? And you're thinking of what I just said. Hey, you just said it shouldn't end up by itself. It doesn't mean it's not going to. it could end up on the beach by itself, but none of this stuff is stuck here. It's only
Yeah.
here until the water rises again and moves it along.
Yeah.
All this, so that's an important distinction. Yes, money could move down the beach. It could even end up on the beach, but not in the beach. There's how does it get from here, right? If the money ended up like any one of these pieces of wood we see in the photo, how to go from there to buried in the sand? And
Hmm.
that is the step that is semi-impossible or very unlikely. I would say so. So here I drew this little graph. So on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, the vertical axis, right, and is increasing density or size of an object. From at the bottom, I didn't really put a 0 on the vertical axis, but extremely light, small objects would be at the bottom. And as you go up, you get increasingly dense, which is heavy, and large objects, right?
Hmm.
So if you just sort of follow the objects in terms of north to south on this, I start out with like a fall leaf, for example, a single bill. Those are down, at the bottom. They're very light. They're easily moved. Doesn't take much water velocity at all. And so what I've shown on the horizontal axis, water velocity. And this, if I told people at work are going to be on here, they're like, that should be shear force. They're right, but that's a little complicated. It's pretty close to a good analogy to say it's the same as water velocity, right? So water velocity just above 0, you start to move things like, this is how things can move. So just above 0, you get to the lowest density and smallest objects, leaves, a single bill, for example. Those things are light. They're almost floating, but not floating. They don't have to be floating, but they're very close to the density of water. They're going to move just, with less than 1 foot per second, which is hardly any movement at all of the water. And then you go a little further right. Now we're getting up close to 2 feet per second. I put in a bundle of money in there. That's in the 2 to 3. I don't exactly know where that goes, but it's in that range. And that's above that. That's supposed to be a little stick. So small sticks, bundles of money, which are just barely more dense than water. Remember, water's pretty heavy. So you pick up a bundle of money. It may be heavy, but is it heavier than an equivalent amount of water? Is the question. So it's only a little heavier when it's waterlogged, right? So you go further up. Now we're up to close to 3 feet per second, and I put a log in there, this would be a waterlogged log. Now, an actual floating log doesn't take much. It could move with just the wind, not even water movement. But this is like waterlogged wood, and most wood ends up in a river. It floats for a while, and after a while, it sinks because it takes on too much water. Further up at 4 feet per second, that image that you may not recognize, that beige thing, that's supposed to be sand. That's how do you show a picture of sand, right? That's a sand dune. It probably takes 4 feet per second or 5 to move sand. And then I got up into heavier things like there were aluminum cans found in Tena Bar. I'm climbing up the graph here. Maybe 5 or 6 feet per second could move aluminum cans, depending on how crushed they are and that sort of thing. That gray square image is supposed to be gravel. You're getting up to 6 or 7 feet per second, and maybe I compress these things a little bit for drama, but there were supposedly spikes and rusty nails in Tena Bar found in the same layers as the money, and those are you're getting up to 8-10 feet per second. And if I had wanted to get dramatic, you go up to 15 feet per second. I mean, cars are moving and rocks and all kinds of. You get up to 20 feet per second, and almost everything's moving. It's tearing up the landscape. So, um, so you got this hierarchy of, as the water moves a little faster and also a little deeper, which it's a 3D graph I didn't want to try to undertake. But as water starts moving a little faster, it starts moving the light things first, and it gets a little faster, can move heavier things, and so forth. And then as it slows down, it will drop out the heavy things. Remember, the water in any given spot. So we were on the beach, and we're out there today, and it's just empty beach, right? There's no velocity. There's no water. Water starts coming up. We got some rains or snow's melting. Water's coming up. It's increasing in depth. It's also increasing in velocity. So at first it's 0. Now it's up to 1 foot per second, and I'm standing on this beach full of stuff. At 1 or 2 feet per second, things like leaves are washing away, while things like a bundle of money might be still sitting still, and gravel and sand and and cans and spikes are not moving at all, right? Because we're only up to 1 or 2 feet per second. But all the money, all the leaves and single bills are washed away. We get up just to, it's only around 2 feet per second. With enough depth, you're going to start moving the money away. Sand's not moving. Sand's way out there at 4 or 5, right? So we get up to 2 feet per second. That money wants to move off the beach, and it has, you know, it's going to move away. The sand is not moving. So as the water comes up, before sand moves and can start to bury anything, that money's already gone.
Mm.
And so by the time the water gets up to 4 feet per second and the depth is increased, the money's gone. All that stuff we saw sitting on the beach is gone. So now we have a mostly just sand beach. Sand's moving around. Yeah, it could bury things like rocks. If there's a rock on the beach, it takes a lot more than 4 feet per second. So the sand could bury that. But money's too light. It was already pushed away. So a flood comes, sand moves around, and you've seen this if you've been around rivers. You go back after the flood on a sandbar, and it's like clean sand. Maybe that's in wave form or whatever. It looks refreshed, right? And there's stuff sitting on it, because what happened is that as the water dropped down again, we went, maybe the water got up to 8 feet per second or 10 in this storm. But as we drop back down, we drop below 4, the sand stops moving. And now remember, there's still stuff coming down the river. We get down to 3, and now we're dropping down to 2. Things like money and logs and sticks can start to settle out on the beach if they're moving down the river at this point, but always on top, because at this point the sand is no longer moving. And if I've explained it well, I don't know if I have, that's why money can't become buried in the sand. It can sit on the sand, and the sand can move, but there's no overlap in time when those two things happen at the same time, right? The money can sit there while the sand's not moving, but in order for the sand to move, the water had to already be moving too fast to allow the money to sit there any longer. And you're thinking, what happens during a big storm when it's moving at 10 feet per second? Everything's moving. But there's no way for the money to like pause long enough to get buried in sand, and it just that wouldn't happen. So this is the crux of why it can't be buried.
I see.
The water velocity is changing over time and space, and in order for the money to be buried, something would have to hold it there, right? And that happens. Like it gets stuck behind a rock, for example, and that rock and the money and a bunch of other stuff could get buried in sand if the money was stuck properly and it didn't float away. Where's the rock? It gets stuck behind a log, right? Where's that log now? When they dig it up, the log or the rock or whatever else was holding the money should have been there, but it wasn't. It was just money.
Yeah.
And sand. So that's the evidence that the river didn't do it. You would have had to hold that money in place. It wouldn't have held itself in place. Something would have to, it would have had to catch somewhere and get buried in sand. And that thing that caught it is missing. So that's the simplest way I can explain why the evidence. I mean, the crime scene out there of the money being exposed sort of exonerates the river. The river didn't do it because it would have had to leave behind that thing that held the money in place. I mean, yes. All right, now what are we talking? A cow stood on the money while the storm raged, and the sand was rushing around the cow's feet until. All right, come on, you're getting crazy now, right? So a natural process to bury the money would have left some kind of. There would have been evidence of whatever the money was caught on at the time. There was no evidence like that, and also such a situation. Probably a bunch of other crap would have been caught in there, right? If there's a big rock, maybe a couple of big rocks, you'd have to figure out how to arrange it. Some rocks, the money gets jammed. Leaves and sticks and other stuff would have been found with the money. They would have got caught as well. Because for every bundle of money in the river, if you want to imagine there ever were bundles of money in the river, there were millions of leaves and millions of sticks, and so that you would have expected other stuff to be caught there too. None of that's present.
Yeah, and I was going to mention too, just growing up along like the Mississippi River and stuff, you go down to the shore and stuff, and you can find old bottles and things and things from the 19th century aren't even buried that deep. I mean, these things might have been sitting there for a century, and they're partially kind of buried in mud a little bit or something, but like they're not. But again, like a bottle would float away though, you would think. But again, it's got to get snagged.
Bottles and cans have the Well, bottles and cans have the opportunity to catch, fill with water and
Mm,
maybe get mud in them, that kind of thing. I think that in order for a bottle to get caught, well, glass is heavy. It's heavier than water. So a bottle completely full of water sinks and
mhm.
has maybe there's a little margin between the density of mud and density of glass where it could maybe sit still long enough to get buried in mud. Sand, though, takes a pretty nice water velocity, a pretty healthy velocity to move it. So
Mm.
I mean, it's possible, but like a can, again, a can that got buried with some sand in it, especially a crushed can, maybe, but that's not the same as money. The money was relatively clean, right? There wasn't a lot of sand
Silt,
in it.
yeah.
It
Well,
was
there's
it
no
was
silt
just
on it.
money.
Yeah, yeah. There was no
So
silt on it, according to
yeah, that was
you know.
interesting too. It's and although that is a little bit, I'm not sure what to make of that evidence that there's no silt because you wouldn't expect silt. And if I had put silt in this exhibit here, it would probably fall somewhere around where the money is, or maybe below it. A single silt particle doesn't take much water velocity to move it, and clay is almost, even though it's you look at if you can measure the density of a clay particle, it's the same as rock, more or less, but it's so small that it can be moved very, very easily. It'll stay suspended. Clay that gets into Columbia ends up in the ocean. Anyway, that's my basic argument why the river didn't.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
and
and I'm not
so
sure
I'm
if
seeing, looking at the comments here. Um,
you're talking about the dredges and stuff, and
yeah, the
he's
dredges. So I do address dredges. So um, and I'm there's probably more to talk about the Palmer report than I kind of knew in November. But anyway, so the Palmer report. Yeah, those of you who don't know what we're talking about is the FBI. So briefly, the Ingrams find the money, decide they're going to call the FBI. FBI comes out, starts looking for the money, and they decide to call a geologist, a hydrologist or geologist. I'm not sure what his training was, from the nearby university. His name was Leonard Palmer. Palmer comes out, does some, he's much more of a scientist than the FBI was,
mhm.
and so he does some pretty rudimentary, really, but some stuff, right? He does some studies, right? This is how they should have done it, like lay a screen out and run all the sand through the screen, but but at this point, I don't know how much chance they had of finding anything intact. Actually, that's Leonard Palmer right there with he's standing. He's the farthest right.
Mhm.
He's a sporty looking guy with his tweed jacket. I mean,
Oh yeah,
absolutely
he is every
professor
bit the
material right there.
1980. Yeah, he's the 1980 professor for sure.
He was. I got to get one of those tweed jackets and start wearing that thing around. Anyway, Palmer comes out. They dig a trench. He digs a trench. I don't know exactly who dug a trench, and he gets in this trench, and he like you would do. A geologist would look, examining a beach, would cut a trench through the beach and look at the layers, because beaches are layered. Those layers had gotten there through different processes. And again, if you look at the layers, you can tell a lot about how they got there and what's happened to them. So um, down below, I'm going to show you. This is just a synopsis. Let's skip this because it's more fun to look at the. There he is. Look at that guy. He's my hero. I gotta start dressing like this because people take me more seriously. Um, so here is Palmer's sketch. And again, when I said rudimentary, Palmer did kind of a quick study because it's not like he has a scientific report, but he did. Um, they cut a trench and he drew the layers of the beach, right? And I one thing as background for anyone who's not into geology or archaeology, this is the most basic geology. It's like asking a mathematician to do arithmetic. He's going to get it right. He knows how to do arithmetic, for crying out loud. This is basic stuff. Palmer, I mean, I don't know anything about Palmer except no geologist would screw this up. This is like geology 101. I mean, he probably taught this every semester. So, so some of the investigators since Palmer's time have sort of discounted or reinterpreted what Palmer said. I, but there's no way Palmer missed. To me, the things he said were so straightforward and basic. It's hard to imagine any geologist screwing that up. So, if you look at the the upper line here. Can you see my cursor? Am I bothering to?
No, you can't see it.
No, you can't. Okay, so there's a diagonal line there that is the top of it. That's the surface of the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then below that's a dotted line, and there's a couple of arrows. Upper surface reworked beach sand, post dredging sand. So he said there were several layers. There's that very thin layer marked by the dotted line, and then there's like a wedge-shaped layer below that, which sort of contains that. Those two were, he called them post dredging, because remember in geology the oldest stuff is on the bottom. That's always the rule. So from the top down, you get this thin layer of the current layer of beach sand, which is, when reworked, is a term that you'd use to indicate from its first deposition things have happened to it. And reworked can kind of mean a lot of things. I think in this case it meant it's right at the surface. People are, trucks are driving around and cattle are walking through it, and it's just getting mixed around. So it's kind of the active layer. Below that, you had another layer of similar post dredging sand that Palmer said it had evidence that the river had worked on it, because as the river starts to move, if you just take a mix of your soil, you throw it on a beach, the river starts to pick it up and put it down as the waves come and go and so forth. And in doing so, the river sorts it out. It goes back to that chart I just showed you, where different water velocities can carry different materials. And even within like a wave, if you've been to the beach, right? Your wave washes up on a sandy beach and goes down. There's sort of changing water depth and velocity, and the water starts sorting things out. And water is really, really efficient like this, and it also never doesn't sort things. It always sorts. So as soon as the water moves that sand just a little bit, that sand starts to sort out. And before that sand is moved even a couple of feet away, it's completely sorted. So when you see mixed, like different sizes sand or sand and like junk, like we found, Palmer reported there were like cans and like trash and stuff in the upper layer, that would have been sorted very, very quickly by the water. So the fact that they're all mixed indicates that it hasn't been worked by water. It's been, it's actively being, the partiers and beachgoers and fishermen are messing it up. And I don't think the Ingrams were the first people to ever make a campfire, right? This is the kind of place you camped all the time. So people are digging it, they're mixing around. So there's two layers like that. And then you get to this clay lump and sand. You see it, it's labeled on the right there. There's a layer of clay lump and sand, and he's kind of depicted little clay lumps mixed with sand. And this, Palmer said, was evidence of dredging. And again, that's so clearly evidence of a non-natural process that, I mean, you're not going to find a geologist who doesn't agree with that. It's like very basic stuff, because water never moves clay in lumps. It would move individual clay particles, many times, obviously, but it's not going to move lumps of clay, and it's not going to mix them in with sand. Those are different densities, different sizes of materials. Water's not going to deposit those things mixed in, jumbled together. The only way to do that, I mean, I guess there are some far-fetched natural processes like landslides, possibly, but this isn't a landslide. There's no hill for it to fall down. The mixed stuff was clearly a dredge layer, which Palmer said was 74.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As far as he knew, the latest dredging was 1974, and there are discussions of maybe the 74 dredge material didn't reach this far. I mean, I think there's some relatively sketchy records. We know that they dredged the river. So on the river, sand and clay and crap are building up in the shipping lanes. The Army Corps of Engineers goes and dredges it every once in a while, dumps that stuff on the shore. And they used to at least do it this way. They would dump it in places like Tena Bar where people wanted more sand. So they dredge it, they pump it through a pipe onto the shore, and then they would spread it out with a bulldozer or whatever. I don't know exactly who did that, if it was the landowners, the Fazios, or the Army Corps did that, but just to kind of make it, more user-friendly and look like a beach and all, instead of leaving a pile of it on the shore. So there's that dredge layer. And then below there are cross-bedded sand and light color sand. Cross-bedded, why did Palmer bother saying that? That's clearly evidence of river working the sand, right? It starts to sort things out. The different colors of sand are slightly different densities or whatever, and so that's the river working that layer. So they dredged the clay and the clay lump mixed with sand layer was dumped on top of what was the previous beach at a lower elevation. They just piled up some extra stuff. So this
Right.
Palmer explained to the FBI. Again, look,
Yeah.
what's he got in his hand? Is it a knife? Like a
spatula or something.
Yeah, that'd be common. You get these trenches, and they're what you really want is this nice clean edge. So you'd like cut a little extra off and peel away the soft stuff, so you get a nice clean look at it. But
yeah, and so for people who are wondering, I mean, basically, so the money, Brian found the money when he brushed over. I think I've got. Do I have the photograph of Brian doing that? Brian essentially raked his hand over the money spot. Okay, he was basically, what happened was a day earlier, a herd of cows that they raised cows, the Fazios as well. A herd of cows got loose and kind of ran through the beach, and Brian was smoothing out a spot. He was like, the way he tells it is that he was not digging in the sand. He was smoothing it, and he felt something hit his arm, and he stopped and said, "Hey, what was that?" And he kept trying to brush it over, and it wouldn't budge. And he said he, just pulled out one packet and then another and then another, and they weren't laying, uniformly on top of each other, but they were kind of catty cornered, as you would expect. But they did come from a single bundle. But anyway, so the money was not buried when he found it deep. Now, the reason, and I'm sure you can get into it, is the reason that they dug, the reason why they dug, trenches like this is because of erosion. They thought maybe somebody with a shovel buried it deep, years earlier, and it had eroded that high. I think they said that the erosion rate was, do you remember what the erosion was?
No, but it's definitely, it's erode, like it's not a grading, it's eroding. So I always thought that was a good explanation for why the money, I mean, it's one explanation, right? If you came out there in 71, buried the money, 3 feet deep, pick a number, you dug a nice hole, it's down well below the surface, is hidden. But over the next 8 or 10 years, sand is slowly eroding, right? Storms come and take sand away. At some point, that money gets to be just below the surface, and at that point, it's susceptible to being found. So, it's a reasonable argument, if you ask me, that it's just the Ingrams were there they happened to be there at the right time. The cows maybe mixed it around a little and exposed it a little more, and Brian was there. Somebody was going to find it. Happened to be Brian.
Well, what's weird, right? What's weird though, is that the money had diatoms on it. So the money did get wet in the Columbia River at some point. So like, it didn't get wet, in winter. The money's found in February. Cooper jumps in November, so it didn't get wet when it was found, and it didn't get wet when it was.
That's your spoiler alert, Ryan. That's the end. That's my next talk. Maybe I don't have that fully cooked, but I have something to say about that. I think.
Okay, good. We'll continue.
So anyway, this is the point of this was there's this. I've gone into all kinds of detail, but you get this clay lump dredge layer clearly from dredging. I mean, I don't think that seems a little silly to dispute that to me, because again, this is, I don't know if Palmer's the best geologist in the world, but you'd have to be the worst geologist in the world to misidentify. This is what geologists are taught, literally 101. Identify, look at the materials, and he identified these mixed materials that's clearly man-made. What he doesn't know, and what I going to look into, or somebody's going to look into, was that this 74 wasn't the only dredging that was done. It was done all the time. It was done for many times prior. So the thing is, if that was a 1974 layer, that clay lump, that's older than where the money was buried, right? But the jumps in 71, and this adds like an extra weird wrinkle to it. The money was now, we're saying, buried after 74, which now your story that you're making up for what happened after Cooper jumped out of that plane is then the money was in storage somewhere for 4 years and then was buried. Like, it all gets more and more confusing.
Okay, time out. I'm doing the Zach Morris time out. Okay, time out. So I just had this weird thought. Now try to follow me. My diseased brain is So it wouldn't a dredge layer also erode away itself?
It would, sure, and it has since. It's not there anymore.
Well, right, but I mean, so like, but the thing is, it wouldn't. The money wouldn't, come to the surface faster. It's just let's say if it was buried, if the dredge layer was buried on top of the money wouldn't shoot up faster than the dredge layer would erode away, would it?
No. I mean, so the money's the. I mean, again, a basic sort of rule of archaeology and geology is that when you find something in a layer, you age it the same as the layer it's in, right?
Yeah.
And the money's in a layer that's newer than 74.
Sure. Okay. Well, there you go.
So the burial happened after 74. There's no way the money moved or anything like that. So
oh Christ.
that right. So I mean, that's what to me, this is the meat of the Palm report is he's saying it, and he's absolutely 100% right in my opinion. The money was buried after this dredging layer was placed.
Yeah,
what we don't know for sure is that really a 1974 dredge layer, because there are previous dredging events. There's no way to look at that layer and say it was from this year or that year. There's right without some fancy carbon dating.
I mean, but didn't I believe in the Palmer report or in the files I know that I sent you. I mean, they do talk about the dredging. They do talk about. Let me see where it is. I think they interviewed the guys. Let me find it right here. They interviewed the Army Corps of Engineers guys, right? And they said it was. I think they said it was. Okay, I think the Army Corps of Engineers guys are saying that it was just 1974 that they did anything there. So,
one of the guys in the Chris Cunningham has promised to send me full dredging records. It happened all the time previous to 74, and you could not look at this clay lump and sand layer and say it was from 74 or 54. You only know which are. One of the things about this kind of sedimentary geology is all you know is which is older. You don't know how much older.
Yeah.
And so that cross-bedded sand, for example, that could be there since 1600, and all kinds of stuff happened up on top. And all we know is when the clay lump layer was dumped, the river was on its way for eroding through that cross-bedded sand, and then the dredge materials jumped on it. It could be 1 year older, it could be 100 years older, it could be 1,000 years older, and the same goes for the stuff above it. But
the bottom line is that, I mean, I'm looking here. It says that this engineer says that he advises that the only dredging operation between November 24th, 71 and the present day, which is 1980, was during August 6th through September 18th, 1974. So yeah, if the money's above that layer, like we just discussed, if it's above the dredge layer, then yeah, it was put there afterwards. And to point out, the people who are wondering about the dredging, maybe it got there via dredge. That is something people talk about. The Army Corps of Engineers. Oh, you do? Continue. Yes.
That's a dredge. So the sediment in the river gets down there. It sits a while. Clay has this property of, aside from being an extremely tiny particle of rock, essentially what clay is, it's sticky, right? So you get clay and slightly larger particles. So just so everyone knows, the very smallest particles of rock are called clay. Slightly larger ones are silt, and there's a range of sizes of clay and silt. And then you get to a certain size, and we call it sand. It's just, and it gets too large, and then we start calling it gravel and cobbles and so forth. So it's largely size that tells them apart, although certain materials tend to break down into clay. Others don't tend to form clay. They form silt or whatever. But anyway, this stuff gets sticky, it gets hard, it's sitting in the bottom of the river. You can't just, a suction dredge is a vacuum cleaner, right? And it's gonna vacuum up the stuff and pipe it like a mile down this pipe and dump it out the other end as a muddy mix of water and sediment. You can't just suck on, you pull water in, you're not going to get the sand, you're going to get water. So you get this crazy looking alien machine thing, and it's grinding up. You get that down. And so this thing sits in front of, actually the orange one in the middle, you can see behind it is the open tube, right? So this cutter head is like grinding, and right behind, as you're grinding, you're sucking water up, and it's pulling all this stuff. But money's not passing through this without it's getting ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you have
Torn to
clay
shreds.
lumps. It's grinding the stuff into a pulp.
Right.
So the money could certainly have been in the bottom of the river. There's no question about that. But it could not have survived this dredge, and especially with 3 pieces staying together. And the layer it's in does not show evidence of being a dredge layer, right? So Palmer didn't look at this and go, this layer is dredging too, and the money's in that layer. It was in what he called a reworked sand layer, which isn't
now.
Reworked sand layer is a little bit non-specific. It could have been a lot of things, but there's no good evidence that was the dredging. But Ryan, one thing you said when that quote from the engineer, if you look back at that quote, you said between 71 and 80, the only dredging was 74. But it doesn't mean they weren't dredging before 71.
I see.
And so if this was a 1951 dredging,
I see.
Then honestly, I hope it is, because that's so much simpler. Like, okay, it could have been buried in 71 right after the crime, right after the hijacking. But
I guess the thing is, though, that that they determined that the erosion rate, somebody came across this, I don't know, that the erosion rate was going to be about every 3 years, it'd be about a foot. And that's where they came up with it was buried 3 feet deep. It's because it would erode. So I guess we don't know how much the beach was built up.
Rates that's unless you're measuring, you can look at over enough years, you can average it, but there's no way to, it's like how much snow do we get in a winter in Pennsylvania? Well, we average a foot, but are we going to get a foot this year? No, we might get 4 this year and 0 next year. And it's that kind of thing where it's,
and don't floods play hell on erosion too, right? I mean, floods impact that.
Most erosion happens almost all of it happens in a flood. So it averages out nicely, and you can give a number, but it wasn't 3 feet a year, and you certainly can't break it down like, oh, that means it's 4 inches a month. No, I mean that it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 3 feet, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then 6 feet. And so I don't think you can use that for any precise. This is a pretty precise in geologic terms. We're talking about a total of 9 years. You can't really use those things.
So basically the dredge layers are irrelevant because we don't know which dredge layer that is.
We know that dredge layer is below the sand, and if we could age that dredge layer, we would be able to age the sand deposit, which is younger. We know that.
Sure.
But no, I mean, again, if we're sure that was 74, that's a weird fact. Like, how'd that money get?
I mean, Palmer seemed pretty sure, right? Because because Palmer seemed pretty sure about it, right?
I think Palmer was he was working with limited information. He didn't know it was 70. There's nothing in Palmer's report or no evidence of. He has no. I don't see any way he could have said it was 74. How do you? And if he did, I would ask, how do you know?
Sure.
What? There's nothing. That clay lump and sand will sit there for 100 years looking the same until it gets eroded. Like you can't tell the difference. I mean, there are like carbon dating fancy things, but Palmer didn't do any of that. So that's to me, this is the most interesting thing about the Palmer report. And later on, investigators came back and said, oh, we saw a clay layer at the surface, and we think that was Palmer's clay lump layer. It wasn't. Palmer didn't report a clay layer. He reported clay lumps and sand, which is a completely different thing.
Yeah, here's the key line here. It says, Palmer says, based on U.S. Corps of Engineer records, which reflect that they dredged the Columbia River at this site in 74, he stated that this clay layer in all probability was deposited during the 74 dredging.
Right.
But
yeah, and I'm with him. If that's the evidence you have, it makes sense. But if we were sure the 74 dredging covered this site, then the uppermost dredge layer would be the 74 layer. If in fact it hadn't eroded away, I mean, we don't have all the details, but Palmer wasn't sure, and we're still not sure. But
I mean, I mean, maybe. I mean, are we sure that? Are we even sure that it had been dredged? I mean, were there other dredge layers?
This is a dredge layer. That's a dredge layer.
I
The clay
mean
lump
before
and sand.
this. I mean before 74. I'm saying it. I mean I'm sure.
No, we're not sure. I
Yeah.
think I've been told that I've been promised there are dredge records that this area was dredged repeatedly over many
Okay.
years, decades. Dredging's like not a new thing.
Okay.
It's an old technology. So I'm reading the comments here, they're is Palmer still alive? We got to
I
get
don't
Palmer
think
out to
so.
CooperCon.
Honestly, I don't know. He seems like he's probably gone by now. He looks about 50 years old back then, so he's probably gone. But I don't know if this is going to help us any right here. This photo here of the kind of timeline. I don't know if that helps at all for anything.
Yeah, those someone's pointing out like those bumps in the shoreline are where the dredge you suck up all this mud, essentially mud and sediment water. You pump it down this long pipeline, and the pipeline is usually sort of positioned in one spot for a while, and mud is pouring out, and you get these big mounds of it's soft stuff, so it's not piling up in a real steep cone. It's kind of spreading out. But you can see in that second photo, there's a couple of lumps sticking out in the water where this cone of mud ended up.
I see. I was wondering what those bumps were. Okay, because those didn't look very natural.
So you can imagine this pipe is spreading, wet sand, and it's spreading out into this round cone, part of which sticks out in the water.
Oh, because the water naturally the water is gonna make it look like every other photo here, where it's just smooth, kind of.
Yeah, water's gonna work. That's part that sticks out is the first place to get hit by the current and stuff, and so it smooths out. But
and that does seem to indicate that is. I mean, there was dredging on the site where the money was found at some point.
Well, it sure does. If that 74 photo and the circle, boy, that's evidence of dredging right there. So, Palmer could have been right. It was a 74
my God.
Dredge layer, which means the money. So explain that one. The money was buried after 74. I don't know. That makes even less sense than the rest of it. Which is awesome. That's why. So back to like the big picture of Tena Bar, it's just ridiculous. Like it's so convoluted. Every piece of evidence you get makes it more complicated, which is cool.
Okay, I mean, I'll remove this photo. Let me do that.
So let's go back. I have a couple more slides, I think. All right. So, and these are lesser photos, but you can see some of the photos of Tena Bar. Looks like my right hand photo is the same one. Those two bumps, right? But that in the right hand photo, that northernmost bump, right near there is where the money was found. So it sure looks like, and I think what was the reports I've read is they pump all the sand on the beach, and then they got like bulldozers or some kind of equipment and spread it out. And I think that was just an attempt to make a nice beach out of it. That's what these guys who own the beach were excited. Like, oh, we're getting all this free sand. Let's improve our beach, even though it's not going to last. That's how beaches are. But here's the dredges again. And those things are spinning around. They're chewing up the sediment. There's money 3 stacks of money in a janky rubber band did not make it through this thing. That's for sure. So Diatoms. Just to recap what the story is with the Diatoms. Years after the event, these guys, Tom Kay and the citizen sleuths, a bunch of them got involved, and they start looking into Tena Bar because the FBI sort of, is it fair to say, Ryan, they didn't really apply a lot of science here. They sort of use some crime solving know-how, if you want to say that, but they didn't like get real sciencey with this. They were kind of stumped on Tena Bar. So they got citizen sleuths involved, some scientists, like, hey, help. And I think it was partly because these scientists were Cooper Vortex guys who were like, hey, let us dig into this. And so whatever happened, they did. So they get some money, some of the money that was found. Remember, Brian Ingram found the money. Did he turn it all over to the FBI and then get some back? I'm not quite sure of the.
Yeah, basically the FBI, after a court case, what happened was after a long court case, the federal government decided there were about 286 bills. And what happened was the federal government said that Brian and the insurance company would split the majority of them. The FBI would get to keep 13 bills or a certain number of bills. And, believe these are the ones that the FBI got to keep. Fragments and things. That's the FBI's money that they got to keep. Okay. But the rest, though, was split between Brian and the insurance company. So, yeah, that's where it is.
I love this. You describe it in your upcoming book, the scene where it's like picking a team
Yeah.
For softball on the school play.
Yeah, they
lay out all the bills.
And they got to pick. Yeah, they flipped a coin and they got to pick which, basically when they split the 200 and I guess 70 bills between Brian and the insurance company, Brian told me that they dumped all the money out onto a table and they got to, they took turns, Brian's dad and then the insurance company guy who was just having none of it. He was furious. He was like, this is taking forever. But Brian's dad was examining each bill, making sure it had serial numbers because he knew the resale value of it.
Right.
So
you pick one, I pick one. You pick one.
Yeah, it's just
6 hours later, you divided up.
Right. Yeah, that guy was not happy.
That only had to make it more fun for Slim.
Sure.
They're like, I'm gonna drag this out. So, so anyway, they get the money. And these guys, citizen sleuths, look for diatoms, which are they're hard-shelled algae, which algae being essentially tiny plants that live in every body of water everywhere. Diatoms are only a subset of algae, but they're again everywhere. You find diatoms, and they have these little hard shells, which, among other properties, I guess, makes the important one we care about is when they die, those shells survive, and you can actually get diatomaceous earth if you've used that for various reasons, but the deposits of these diatom shells will build up in certain parts of the ocean, but you can also find them all over the place. So citizen sleuths get some money, take some little pieces out of the money, looks for diatoms, and they find diatoms on the money. Great. That's what they're looking for. And luckily the Columbia River has been studied ad nauseum because it's a big, important river. And there are reports, scientific papers published out there that tell you what the diatom community, there's lots of different diatoms. There's not one, it's not like yes or no diatoms. There are all kinds of species out there. So if you go out in the winter, you're going to find certain kinds of diatoms. And in the summer, you're going to find some of the same diatoms, but some different ones. And the mix, the proportion of them is different and so forth. So you can look at the mix of diatoms that you find on the bills, and you can match it up to summer or winter or fall or spring or whatever. So they find these diatoms in the bills, and the diatoms match the May and June diatom bloom in the Columbia. It's kind of the same every year. They look at they're like, oh, this is the spring diatoms, spring, early summer diatoms, right? And my third point here is that this is citizen sleuths they looked and did some basic tests, but they said the diatoms can't make it through sand to get to the money. That means, well, what, right? This is when you go to that means and you fill in the blank here, it gets kind of nuts. So the money, well, it was apparently buried after 74. So who cares when the crime happened? But it didn't fall in the river in 71 because that would have been November. Would have floated down the river, being exposed to winter diatoms, and then anyway, you have spring and summer diatoms in the money. I don't know. I don't have a good story for this because it doesn't make any sense at all. Every time you start making up an explanation, it's
terrible. Yeah,
it just falls apart. But so you have spring, summer diatoms on the money, and actually, this was published in a well-known journal. This was like a scientific study.
It was in Science. It was in
a big
Science.
deal.
Yeah,
right. And kudos to
peer
those guys.
reviewed.
It was peer reviewed.
Yeah.
It was a solid scientific study. So for us to argue that they didn't find the diatoms they said they found, or the diatoms don't match other studies which are well published, it just seems silly for us to start questioning that. It's like, let's start, questioning what time it was, because we don't believe in clocks. It's well documented stuff, but when you try to put a coherent story together, how you got spring diatoms on money that was stolen in November, and buried apparently 4 years later. I don't know. The story falls apart, right? So anyway, that's the Diatom study as it stands. There were spring and summer diatoms on the money. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But this is, and I need to maybe, I definitely need to sort of further cook this idea. But as a water resources engineer, I can tell you for sure there's a thing called a sand filter in engineering. It's a common water filter because sand is abundant and makes a good filter. You run water through sand, trying to remove stuff like diatoms, and the sand will not catch them all. Every single engineer who's ever designed a sand filter will tell you about breakthrough curves, right? And so this slide was meant to just, it's pretty hard to find. What you find is everybody knows that sand filters have a breakthrough curve. You send water through, they'll catch algae and they'll catch diatoms, which is a common thing to try to remove from water, right? If I'm trying to make drinking water out of a lake, for example, I got to get the algae and diatoms out, among other things. So you create a sand filter, you start running water through. It's going to work for a while, but not perfectly. And eventually you're going to get a breakthrough curve where it starts working worse and worse as you overload the filter with diatoms or any particle, right? So, and it's the problem is, for me finding good data. You can see I title this "Representative Evidence of Incomplete Removal of Algae Diatoms by Sand Filters." This is conditions without added coagulant. Most of the studies you find are people who know there's a problem just using sand filters as is. So they're using like a flocculant or a coagulant. They're trying to improve the performance. So it's hard to find the data before, because no one wants to publish the failure data. They want to publish success. So anyway, the point of this was 90%, 37%, 60%. You don't get 100% removal of diatoms from sand. Even in a sand filter where you carefully selected the sand size, you made a big thick layer of sand, you're running water through in the right way. Even under those good conditions, you don't get 100% of the diatoms. You don't. Everyone, and you go back to the Citizen Sleuth assumption. They said, well, diatoms don't move through sand. Diatoms do move through sand. That's well known to everybody who's built a sand filter. And so I think it's possible that the diatoms got on the money while it was buried. And there's a bunch of reasons why that you arguments against that. But most of the arguments are sort of percentage based, right? Oh yeah, sand removes diatoms. It removes most of the diatoms, not all of them. Sand's gonna, the conditions are gonna do this or that. Well, those are only like, it'll get most of it. It'll reduce the count of diatoms. It's unlikely, but it's never impossible. So that's what this slide was trying to show you, that the difference, these are different types of sand filters, none of which gets 100% of the diatoms, right? And again, if I was doing counterpoint on myself, I'd say, well, these are sand filters where you're like putting, you're deliberately putting lots of water through the sand filter and it gets overloaded. Is the beach that way? I don't know if the beach is that way. It is a little bit. And so I looked at but you still get the problem of if summer diatoms go through the water, the sand, don't winter diatoms go through sand? Yes. In fact, winter diatoms, if you look at the mix of species, they're smaller. They should go through better than the summer diatoms. But if you look at the Columbia River hydrology, this is when river hydrology comes to the forefront here. And these are the years. So this graph is showing the years between, on the left, I have that red line. That is the hijacking, right? That's the hijacking, just in the end of 71, right? And then you go through all these ups and downs in river level, and I've colored in May and June. This is when we think the money got wet. May and June for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, up to money's discovered on the right hand side, right? So this is an actual Columbia River discharge. And discharge is the volume of water moving down the Columbia River, right? And it's not, now when more water goes down, right? And you notice the discharge, like when at the very beginning when I started out the line at the hijacking, it was, I don't know, 150,000 cubic feet per second. It by July of 72, it was up to over 600,000. What is that? 4 times as much? So the amount of water in the river changes dramatically. This isn't exactly the same as water surface elevation, right? That's a There's some calculations you got to do and so forth. But what it meant is, so the jump happens at the beginning of the graph on the left here, 71. Water's kind of low. That's pretty typical. 150 between 100 and 200,000 cubic feet per second is standard winter discharge apparently in Columbia. By like that, the first green bar there is showing basically May, June of 72. We got 4 times as much water, which means the water came way up the beach, right? So there's a spot on the beach where you might have gone in 71, even though now we get the evidence of the 74 dredge layer. Let's ignore that. You go in 71, you bury the money on what looks to you like a dry beach. I'm on the beach, I'm not in the river, way up on the beach, bury it. There's a big swath of beach that by July is underwater. Wasn't in the winter. Okay, now I'm moving right from that first green swath. It drops way down, and we're in the like fall and winter of 72, moving to 73. We're under 200,000 CFS, right? 73, there's no spring flood, right? All right. Stays low until basically the third green bar from the left is 74. This is right around May, June of 74. Again, water's way up. It's gone up, triple or 4 times as much. So again, there's a section of beach that was dry most of the time from 72 to May and June of 74. Water's come way up again. And so if the money's in this certain section of beach, it's now underwater in May and June only, right? There's a little bit of a spike there. I don't know, between the second and third green bars, that I think that's probably a February or March, but it's a short-lived flood, right? So a little bit of an anomaly. But by 7174, that third bar, we got high water again on the beach. It drops down again. We're going right here. Drops down again for fall, winter. Again, the next green bar, the fourth green bar, water's high again. And it's only 400,000. But again, there's some section of beach that got inundated now 1, 2, 3 times. We go to 76. It happened again, right? So there's a bunch of these spring floods that happen yearly, and there's a significant portion of this beach that basically only gets wet during May, June. So if the money, and again, how you figure out exactly where the money was buried, and are we in this certain elevation range? I don't know all that, but I do know there's a significant portion of the beach that is only wet during May and June. And if diatoms can get through the sand diatoms do move through sand. And remember, there's a tide here too. So in addition to all this seasonal variation of water's going up and down a couple of feet all the time. So that's sort of pumping water through the sand. So if you're in the section of beach that gets wet in May and June, and you have this movement of water up and down every, twice a day, pushing water through the sand, you could be pushing diatoms onto, again, there you go, right? So my guess is part of the reason this is sandy beach and not full of plants and stuff is because it goes underwater with some regularity, right? So up near the trees is probably the high water mark of,
Mm,
5 or
yeah.
600,000 CFS. Down at the, we don't exactly know what the discharge was on this day, but if it's February, it's probably down in the 200,000 CFS range, right? So that range between about where the water is in the photo and those trees goes underwater only in May and June,
I see.
and almost every May and June, like 6 out of the 9 years or whatever. We have to count them up, but most May and June, that area goes underwater. Not very much at other times of the year. It's not zero, but generally not at other times of the year. So that area is inundated at the right time of year. We know diatoms can move through sand to some extent, and they didn't find millions of diatoms. They found
Yeah.
whatever the number is, thousands or hundreds, but the river's full of millions of diatoms. So it only takes a percentage to work its way through the sand. And remember, this was not a sand filter. This is just a random sand. It's not
So the
set up
idea
right
that
to filter.
so the silly idea, it's totally unnecessary. The idea that Cooper made the money wet and then threw it in a hole himself. I mean, this is all just
I think
that's ridiculous.
There's a case to be made, and it can be made. I can make it a little more strongly, I guess, and get better evidence. But yeah, it could have been just happened in the beach. It could have been buried in the beach. And there's some other the guys who these guys weren't dumb guys who did this study. There's several other lines of reasoning. They're arguing why they think the money was inundated, not in the beach. But I think there's reason to question all that. The diatoms could have gotten there while it was buried, I think. So there we go. That's again, this is one of those things. If you are coming up with how the money get to Tena Bar story, and you don't have to account for May, June, it was dunked in the river and then buried after 1970. All of it gets easier. So this graph was going to show you that previous graph was in discharge. This is water surface elevation, and you can see this is at, where are we at? Vancouver, right? Yeah, Vancouver, Washington. You can see this is in feet, not cubic feet per second. This is just measuring water height in feet, right? On some bridge, there's literally a giant ruler, and you go out every day and you measure. So you see it in the winter. It's close to on the left-hand side. You'll see the scale in feet, the 5 foot line there towards the bottom. River's around 5 feet. I mean, in winter's around 5 feet. It maybe goes down to 3. It maybe goes up to 6 or 8. And then summer, it's up to 15 plus feet, right? And I think that dotted red line, you see it horizontally across the middle. At every gauge, they assign flood stage. You'll hear, my God, the so-and-so river is rising above flood stage. Well, that's just somebody went out to pick the number. Like, when it hits 17 feet here at Vancouver, it's going to go over the wall onto Main Street. We're going to call that flood stage. It's essentially what flood stage is. So somebody's identified flood stage because that has some significance. It doesn't really have hydrologic significance, except that it's going to cause some problem. That's what flood stage is. But anyway, if you look at this again, these peaks are in the spring and summer, and they're like 10 feet or more higher than winter level. So you go up 10 feet on a beach, that's horizontally, that's 50 or 100 feet horizontally. So that was just pointing out that there's a lot of beach that would get buried every spring and summer, and would be dry every winter. So, and there we go. There's Brian Ingram. Are those his parents? It's a little hard to tell, but I assume they are.
Yeah, that's them.
And that's they're sort of sitting right where the money was found.
Yeah, I've got this photo here,
Ron.
I've got this. Where is it? Oh, did I not? Here we go. Yeah, I lined those up. Yeah, I lined the photos up so you can see. Yeah, I mean, that is the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That same tree is pretty distinctive. I think the tree is gone now.
Is that
right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'd be underwater too, but yeah, it'd be gone, I would guess. But I mean, because this spot it's underwater now, apparently. So.
Well, then what would happen, Ryan, is It's not like the tree. You just remove enough sand from the roots of this tree, and it falls over into the water.
Yeah.
It would have stayed the same. The tree would have stayed still
Mm,
much longer than the beach. Sand, little particles of sand you can wash away, but that tree has roots that are
sure. Deep.
probably solid in there. But
Right. But yeah, that's them. This is a year later, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the year anniversary. Yeah.
And this was just this is the last. The other thing about why are there summer diatoms and not winter diatoms in the money? The other, another part of the picture is there are a lot more diatoms in summer than in winter. And this is just showing you, like, if you look at this graph, the green bars, right? The number at the far left there, where's 1, that's January. Below 100, you get to the summer numbers are up in, 200 or 300. So there's several times more. There's just more diatoms in the summer. So those brief winter floods, not only do they last shorter time, but there just aren't as many diatoms in the winter, was my point.
But the bottom line with the diatoms is that the money did not fall into the river during the hijacking. That's
not.
I mean, right?
I don't know if I can actually, I don't know. If it fell in the river during the hijacking, it would have winter diatoms, but there aren't that many winter diatoms.
I see.
And it had to have a source from. There's a lot more summer diatoms than winter, so you have to explain that.
But did they not find any?
You could drop in the river in the winter, and
I mean, I don't know if they found any. I don't know if they found any winter diatoms on the money. Did they?
They're all a mix. So if you look
Okay.
at what they actually found, it's a mix of species, and some of the species are year-round species. Others really only found in the summer or winter, but some of the winter species are also found in summer. So I don't think you can say there's no winter diatoms in this sample. It's just that you have to look at the grouping of the species. It's not like it's not a single species that you're looking at. It's the population size.
Okay, so you can't. I mean, you can't make a sweeping statement, but you can say that it tends to indicate that the money did not fall into the Columbia River in the wintertime. Are you
certainly that wasn't the only exposure. If you dunked the money in the river in November, you would not get the mix of species that you saw on the money. That's 100% sure.
Okay.
Now, if you dumped it in November and also it got wet every spring, that's less. It's all sort of. I mean, science is very complex, right? You have to interpret it all. But I guess I was more like trying to say that the whole summer diatom thing, there might be a simpler explanation, which is simply that the money was buried in an area of the beach that's wet every summer.
Yeah.
Some of the diatoms got through the sand because it does, they do get through to some extent, and that might explain what it. It's not quite so easy to write off what Citizen Sleuths found, because they did a thorough job, and it was a nice paper, but at least I'm kind of cracking the door open. Like, there might be another explanation, because it's so hard to explain their findings otherwise.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, somebody's asking about the time of year of the dredging. The dredging was in August and September. So.
Yeah, I'm not that sure why that matters.
Yeah, the dredging is it's dead. I mean, the money did not get there because of the dredge. It just didn't. So the dredge would have destroyed the money. Period. Yeah.
And someone's making a comment that there were very few winter diatoms and preponderance of summer. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not that there's none of the winter species, and it's black and white, but it's just like, wow, the mix here certainly represents summer, not winter. But there may have been a diatom or two that were from winter. You can't be sure of that. Yeah. So Mary J4787 is pointing out the Astrionella is a characteristically summer diatom with a big, fancy, for diatoms, big, fancy shell that it's also pretty delicate, and they found some Astronella on the money. They have these like like the star you put on top of your Christmas tree or whatever. It has all these fine arms sticking out that would be easily broken, and they found the Astronella. They were broken on money, but the pieces were all sitting around, right? It was actually is like you dropped a whole one, and yes, it broke, but the pieces are right there. So that led them to sort of conclude that, hey, this thing got here whole, which is a pretty safe conclusion, but I don't know. The diatoms are tricky. The idea that they got there through this, I don't think you can discount the idea they got through the sand. It's possible.
You're making it worse. The dredging layers don't matter now, and the diatoms don't matter now. It's like, oh my God.
I don't think you can. I'm just like, I don't have a. In a way, I'm just trying to make sure this, like the science makes sense. I don't think we can be 100. The 74 dredging layer sure seems, when you look at that photo of the big piles of sand from 74, they're really close to the site where the money was found. So that one seems pretty solid.
Yeah.
I'm not denying there's summer diatoms. I'm just questioning how they got to the money. They could have gotten there during there is a clear record of summer floods, and only summer floods.
And Augie's saying he recalls on a Vortex episode with Mark Meltzer saying he's seen live fish and even televisions come out of a dredger. Well, remember, there's two different kinds of dredges. There's the dredge like we showed earlier, and then there's a clamshell dredge that can just kind of grabs mud at the bottom or whatever and just lifts it up. And yeah, you can grab things, but out of a dredging, that thing is, that thing was I think, where was it, Ron? Their slide. There it is. I mean, that thing's gruesome looking. Like nothing is getting through that thing.
Yeah, I mean, but you look again, Ryan, the orange one. There's some gaps there. Maybe, I mean, you can't. This is one of those things you can't say.
But yeah,
there's no possible way. If you dredged a river full of money, some of it would probably come out pretty well on the other end. The great majority would be ground up, but a piece or two might make it through. But
well, 3 packets wouldn't be together is the issue.
How they stuck together.
Yeah. So I agree. And they're, well, I mean, they're still rubber banded together, according to Brian.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
I mean, I think there's still some thought to be done on the whole rubber band thing. Like, again, Citizen Sleuths looked at rubber band. It was one of the, like, how long would rubber bands last? And they don't last very long, right? A year or two.
No.
So
yeah,
that suggests the money must have been buried only a year or two. But the, I mean, is that the final word on rubber bands? Because
oxygen's the problem.
Said they were there, but like degraded to the point where as soon as you sort of touched them, they fell apart.
They disintegrated, yeah, basically. So I mean, it's almost like they were just gummy residuals and stuff. Although I mean, rubber bands they were just kind of the gummy residuals of it. Or, it's a shame though that they didn't. I don't know. I guess in hindsight, you're like, well, they didn't do this or that, but we don't know if it was the same rubber bands or not, Max. I mean, who knows? I mean, the problem is, again, another booger bear of this whole thing is that there's $6,000 there. There's 3 packets. Okay. I mean, Cooper's money, folks, is delivered, as best we can tell, looking like this. Okay. It is, 5 stacks, 5 packets rubber banded together into a single bundle in bricks. Essentially. That is what the guy who oversaw them putting the money in the bag said. The guy who carried the money bag onto the plane or onto the, to the airport in his lap. Bill Grinnell, the security officer at the bank, said that was what they did. It was 5 stacks. And again, that's easy, right? $200,000, $10,000 a brick, get 20 bricks and you're done, right? No need for weirdness. So, I mean, that almost in and of itself seems to indicate human intervention with the money.
That's weirder than any of it. Like someone took 2 out of 5 and left 3.
Yeah.
What? I mean, why?
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, just very strange, right? Just very strange. And then we have, the fact that Cooper is pulling packets. Cooper is pulling packets out of bundles to hand to the stewardesses. I mean, it seems possible that he handed a packet each or tried to Alice and Flo as they were leaving. So maybe that's the bundle, but the bottom line is that that's all just crazy conjecture. But
Right.
the bottom line is that we know the money was delivered in $10,000 and there's $6,000 there. So we're missing 2 packets.
Yeah. So Fred Rothstein maybe was asking about the erosion. Yeah. So if you went out there and buried the money, so here's the thing: if you buried the money 3 feet deep or deep enough in sediment, you would get to a further down you go in sediment. Sand is this effect is the least dramatic of all sediment. Like in clay, it's really dramatic. If you buried something deep in clay, water's not moving, oxygen stops moving. That stuff tends to be pretty well preserved. It'll go anoxic and it may turn color, but it might last like a rubber band might last 100 years in clay.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was buried deep enough in sand, you would get. This is kind of contrary to the idea that diatoms are coming and going. But if it was buried deeply, you might not get much water movement, and therefore not much
Oxygen getting to it.
Oxygen movement. And so it might just be kind of anoxic and just sit there, and the rubber bands could last longer. And then slowly, a couple inches are lost here and there, and you get down, the surface gets down to where your money is. The money doesn't reach the surface. The money stays still, but the surface is coming down, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where the cows or Brian Ingram, whatever.
Yeah, it does seem like, though, what's interesting is that, like, in fact, Palmer, I think it's Palmer and the FBI concluded that the money got there within the last year. I mean, they thought it had been this
Some of those, you read Palmer's report, and some of it he does not justify or explain. And like that part I don't like. Why is he saying that?
I mean, maybe I guess the condition of the money, they thought that the money would be disintegrated, but that's not true.
I mean, you can put money in your desk drawer and it'll last forever.
Yeah, but I guess it's not getting wet and soggy.
Right. But I mean, so from lasting forever to lasting a year, there's a series of worse and worse conditions. And how bad was the sand? I don't think we have the final word on how long money would last in the sand in those conditions.
No, because there's just so many different conditions. Yeah, I mean, there's so many variables, right? I mean, you would have to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you would have to do a really long experiment with, $300, I guess, in the sand for years and just see. I mean, you'd be willing to, light money on fire for your experiment, I guess.
You'd have to do it more than once, right? Because
yeah, right.
Control. Right? You have to bury a bunch of money in a bunch of sandbars and let's see what happens. And
but it does seem like, though, that when we're talking about, I mean, the likelihood that the dredge layer from 74 was completely eroded by that point in 5 years or whatever, that seems unlikely.
Well, we know it wasn't actually. For sure it was not, because it still was there, right? So
well, then if the money's above it, then that's it. I mean, it got there after 74.
We know what we know is there is a dredge layer below the money. Now,
but that has to be. I mean, but I'm saying that if there ever was a dredge layer above the money, then it would have to have completely eroded away in 5 years, right? See what I'm saying? Like,
right? Okay, so if the money's buried in 71 and they pile dredge layer on top of it, that could have happened.
So that whole dredge layer could have been gone in 5 years.
Sure, that's okay. There's no proof that it wasn't, right?
Yeah,
but I mean, I like that theory. Now, so money's buried in 71. They pile dredge material on top of it, rendering it really deep for 5 of the 8 years it's missing, right? So it just sits there, and the rubber band doesn't get a lot of oxygen, doesn't degrade much. River eventually gets rid of that dredge layer. There's no evidence. We don't know what disappeared, right? That could have just disappeared, washed away. And so now we're down to, and you're always going to see the same upper surface reworked beach sand or whatever he calls it here.
Yeah.
There's always a surface layer of that, right? And it could have been dredge layer that was just, if you had dredge sand right at the surface and cows are walking on it and people are digging campfires, you can't tell them. After a while, you can't tell, right?
Okay.
That it was dredge layer. So maybe that's an old dredge layer we see in Palmer's
yeah. So I mean, Palmer's just speculating that that's the 74 dredge layer.
Right, but if that was an old dredge layer and 74 was gone. I mean, that's
don't know.
I like your theory. Now you solved it. So it was buried in 71. In 74, they pumped a bunch of dredge material on it, which preserved it until about 1978 or 79. That material washes away. So now it's getting near the surface and starting to be exposed to oxygen and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, literally an hour ago, I was like, "Oh, it's above the dredge layer, so it must be post
It's above
74.
a dredge layer. We
It's
don't know
above
which
a
one.
dredge layer. Thank you. Yeah, God. Oh man, this is, I swear, for those who don't know Star Trek, there is a thing in Star Trek called the Kobayashi Maru, which is like this test that you cannot win. It's a Starfleet Academy test that is designed to lose. You cannot win. You cannot beat it unless you cheat, like James T. Kirk did. So it's like, I swear to God, the DB Cooper case is like a Kobayashi Maru for the FBI or something. Like it's everything is it's almost like it's purposely written to confound you. Everything in this case is purposely created to confound the hell out of all of us. Because even this crap is, we can't be sure. There's no definitive answers on anything. It's like, this is the Kobayashi Maru.
Actually, I'm, you're suggesting here that the 74 dredge layers is gone. I haven't heard that before, and I'm trying to think of any evidence that you're wrong, and I don't think there is any.
I guess I just didn't know that a dredge layer could be wiped away in 5 years.
Well, they're all gone now, right? The whole thing's gone. The whole beach is gone. And if you go, I'm just wondering if we go, let's go down here. So 74 happens, right? And when was the dredge layer dumped?
September 74.
Okay, so it's jumped between the green bar at 74 and the green bar at 75, right? We got 75 and 76 floods that happened. Could they have just washed it away? Why not?
Okay. And also, well, I mean, I don't know if it matters at all, but what's interesting is that the very first speculation, they had two different either geologists or somebody, two different guys, when the Tena Bar money was found, they came out and said, oh, it got pushed there by ice, because the Columbia River a year earlier was basically frozen over by ice. And so they're like, oh, maybe it got entombed in a case of ice and got there. Obviously it did not, because it just wouldn't. But
well, how would it get buried? So one of the problems is that still doesn't bury it.
Right. And so, but I guess what I'm saying though is that the ice could scrape off a layer, right? Couldn't ice scrape off layers of sand moving along?
I mean, a little bit, but not, I don't think
not enough.
No, not enough.
Okay. Well, okay. And that stinks. Okay. Well, that kind of kills that. That kind of kills that.
But we do have two floods after 74.
Sure.
That were 400,000 CFS. I mean, the one problem is we should see that in aerial photos. You should see some erosion. But one thing about dredging and beach replenishment attempts will prove this. If you don't, there are certain areas, like a beach exists because the river and the currents are favorable for sand landing there and not being washed away. And if you just decide, I'm going to put a beach here where it doesn't belong, those things will wash away faster than you can dredge them, right? And so it's possible that the condition of the Columbia in the early 70s, mid 70s here, just wasn't favoring a beach staying at Tena Bar. And so you pile a bunch of sand and you think you've done something great, but it just doesn't want to stay, and it washes away. And
well, what about what Drew is saying?
Fast.
What about what Drew is saying here? He's saying the ice barge washes ashore, melts. As it melts, it holds the money in place to start the burial. So he says ice makes the most sense for natural burial.
Ice is extremely buoyant. So you have this super buoyant material. Instead of ice, imagine it's styrofoam. I encase the money in styrofoam and leave that on the beach. It's not going to stay there while sand moves.
Okay.
Because it's super light. right? That's my
Oh, yeah,
problem with
ice.
that.
That
I mean,
that makes sense. Okay.
there's some probably convoluted scenario where some big chunk of ice with the money in the corner, like if the ice was up above it, holding it down. This, we're getting crazy. Ice is too buoyant to do that, I think.
That makes sense. Let's see. All right. So
I have had dinner with Tom, by the way.
yeah, Tom's a good dude. Yeah. I mean, that's just it. So, I mean, God, yeah, it just, I swear it's the Kobayashi Maru because, but
And Drew Daniel. So no, I don't think the money would shred in the river. It would be beat up, but the money was beat up when it was found.
yeah, I mean, the money's
right. So
hella beat up. Look at it. I mean, it's pretty torn up.
clumps of money could definitely move down the river. And if you look in
Okay.
rivers, even on beaches in the ocean, you're going to find some fairly intact trash out there, right? That
So, yeah.
maybe hasn't been in there long, but it's moved distance and it's still intact. It's not destroyed.
So Flyjack is probably watching, our friend Flyjack. He's been saying for a long time that, and I just want to get your thoughts on this. He says that these edges being kind of rounded off is evidence of tumbling along the bottom of a river. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I like the logic. I just don't. The other thing though is that money that's degrading from any process degrading it is going to degrade at the edges, and the center is going to stay intact. So I just don't
and
know how you
also
tell
if
the
that's
difference.
if it was tumbling also, then explain, the shards. I mean, the famous, the shards, these all these shards they found everywhere on the beach. That's just the remnants of, that's what's left. Yeah.
Again, so
yeah.
I mean, yes, I hear what you're saying, Ryan, and I can say that yes, if you put pristine bills in a beach and left them there long enough to start falling apart, the shards are going to be right nearby, like this photo.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you put beat up bills in a beach and then some 8-year-old kid excavates them,
They're
aren't
gonna
you going
flake
to,
apart.
right? It's just there's more than one explanation that makes sense. As far as people have talked a lot about the blackened bills being FBI fingerprinting, there's just a lot of redox conditions in sediment that make things go black. If you look in, I mean, the most basic is iron redox. So iron, we all know rust is bright orange, right?
I want to say though, I'll stop you there. I do want to say that I do believe Tom confirmed that it was fingerprint.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, because and that's why none of Brian's bills look like this, but only the FBI bills, because they fingerprinted a few of these bills. That's why the FBI has bills that are black, but Brian does not have any black bills.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? Because that's just because those are the ones, and look how uniformly black they are too. So like,
That's
clearly
true.
they. Yeah.
But I was just going to point out that lots of things in low oxygen conditions turn black. I mean, you go out in your local creek and you're going to find black fall leaves in like some little pools, some quiet pool. It just doesn't seem that hard to explain to me. I mean, especially when we don't know, all we're seeing is looking at them in the photo like, oh, it's black. What? There's lots of explanations for that. That doesn't seem that crazy to me or anything.
Yeah. And I'll point out something too, a little experiment that I did that kind of, I don't know if it matters or not, but I remember, and I wish I had the video for it. I had a video for it. I took like some money. I took, trying to find where I have that photograph of my bills there. Here we go. Yeah. So like I got a bank bundle of 3 packets. Okay. And I just threw it on the ground. I literally just lost Ron. Oh,
no, I'm still here.
Okay. I literally threw it on the ground in my house and it shifted. Like it already started to shift. So I just threw it. I threw it up against the wall, kind of, I made it tumble a little bit. And just that action alone started to separate the bills. Okay. Or to separate the packets. Okay. And so that's what I'm just saying, that I don't know if any sort of tumbling or violent motion is going to keep packets together. I mean, they're going to shift out
Yeah,
of the rubber band.
one of your rubber bands is almost removed already.
Yeah, just I threw it one time on the ground and it started to pop off a little bit. So that's why I don't believe in the tumbling, because I just think it would have been, you know, I think the bundle itself would have separated. But instead, Brian, and this is not a great illustration. I mean, it's not my greatest illustration, but it's just a AI thing. But I mean, you know,
I've been telling people this is an actual picture of me as a 5-year-old hydrologist.
That's right. But I mean, Brian said that the money was not, you know, stacked like that, but it was laying on top of each other, the packets. So, which is why I think it could have looked like that, you know, sort of like something like that, a little bit, you know, kind of just jumbled. But they were still identifiable packets, because Brian, and I did confirm that with Brian. I said, Brian, so just to be sure, you reached in you pulled out 3 packets. He goes, yes, absolutely. He said, I handed my dad 3 times, like here. So
I think the fact that they were even close together, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to take 3 pristine stacks of bills and carefully bury them and end up with them even close to stacked, right?
Yeah, just because the ground is going to shift, and just, I mean, there's so many things that are just going to make it. Yeah, just
throwing the sand back in, or getting one. I will say this though: if you're careful and you bury them in the sand, a foot down or whatever, they're not going to move an inch. Fragments are not going to drift away. It's going to remain. Now the trick is to uncover it carefully. But if you buried it and covered it in sand, a couple of feet down on the beach, 100 years from now, it's going to still be carefully stacked up, as long as that beach hasn't eroded down. So people are like, oh, the fragments migrate. No, the fragments didn't migrate 1 millimeter. They would have broken off from the money and been sitting in exact, you know, they might have been separated by some kind of degradation process, but they didn't move anywhere. Nothing's moving through that sand.
Yeah.
So,
now, I mean, the shards being found. I mean, the problem is that, you know, Bruce Smith has a lot about the shards. He's kind of a big shard guy. He just loves the shards, because there were shards found, you know, 20 feet away or whatever. And it's like, okay, but, you know, remember, I mean, the FBI literally, they said, hey, go home and get your shovels and rakes. And they were just scooping sand everywhere. So, I mean, that means nothing. That there were shards
on a
found.
Discussion the other day, somebody sent me a picture of the FBI with a rototiller. I'm like, what? What in the actual, you know, holy cow, man, that's the worst thing I can think of, but they did it. So shards, and if you dig a hole, you're Brian Ingram, you dig a hole and you pull out the money. Shards, all the shards which had been sitting exactly in situ right next to the money, you left behind, right? Now you start digging around for more. The shards are just mixed in with the sand. They're falling into the excavation. You've lost all track of where those shards started and where, you know, and so did the FBI. They 3 feet down. There's no way shards migrated through the sand. And it just, they were digging, they ruined the archaeology side of it.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, well, and I mean, there's all kinds of drama with the Tena Bar stuff too, because it wasn't even their jurisdiction, really. They crossed state lines to basically, for those wondering, you know, the Cooper case is a Seattle FBI.
Rosie, we don't know if they rototilled the cache. I'm sorry to interrupt it.
Yeah.
Like they rototilled the beach though. I mean, what were they doing? They were trying, but they were complete amateurs at excavating an archaeology site. Complete amateurs.
Yeah. Well, Mary's asking, she says, is it right the FBI kept the shards? Yes. Just the bigger bits were shared. Well, yeah, because the FBI, I mean, they kept some of them. I mean, like, you know, that's not it. Where is it? This is the FBI's money. So yeah, they did keep some of the shards. And there's also, I'll try to find that. It's on Citizen Sleuths, and let me try to find that gallery of the on Citizen Sleuths. There is a photograph that shows. Yeah, there we go. It shows I mean, they have lots of like little fragments too. Let me try to let me screenshot that so I can, because I can't save it because it'll mess me up there. But let's see. But yeah, the shards mean nothing. I mean, again, the shards are literally just because some people are like, oh, the shards are evidence of more money. No, the shards are just the pieces. I mean,
the shards are evidence of sloppy excavation. Is probably about it.
Yeah, and but mainly the shards are what came off the money. I mean, that's why the money looks like that. I mean, that stuff didn't disintegrate into nothing. Those pieces, right? Those pieces.
And to not denigrate the FBI any further, it starts with Brian Ingram. He was a little kid who found some money. He didn't scoop up all the shards. He grabbed the money and left behind a bunch of shards. And so, right from the beginning, there's like shards spread around, and
and like I said, as I said, the Ingram family were, throwing money, or they were digging around for ages looking for this stuff.
Yeah, they dug around and tried to find more money. It was so as deep as if you ever dug a hole in sand's always falling in, and it's like a churning process. As far down as they dug, that's how far the shards got, and they introduced the shards. Not
here's a photo. I mean, they even picked up little bitty fragments like that. That's from that's an FBI photo. I mean, this like tiny little specks, right? I mean, that looks like that one on the left looks like stuff that you dump out of a pipe, after smoking a pipe or something. And that's just like pretty much nothing. But yeah, the FBI, I mean, look, but yes, I was saying is that this was a Seattle case, and the Seattle agents did not find out about Tena Bar until they saw it on the news. So like nobody in Portland called their brethren in Seattle, said, hey, we had a major update in your case. Just like insane. And I mean,
that's not an accident either.
No, hell no. They wanted the glory for sure. Ralph Himmelsbach was retiring, 2 weeks later, forced retirement. So I think he wanted to be the man to do it, to find the body or whatever. I mean, and he didn't care. He crossed state lines. And, in my interview with John Detler, I asked him at CooperCon, I said, was that wrong of them to do that? He goes, well, yeah, not only was it our case, but they crossed into Washington State, a different state.
Right. It was 100% wrong. But whatever, you're going to play dumb. And, Augie Perzini is asking if, I don't think there are diatoms in well water. I cannot understand how there would be.
No, although, so now there's been some thought that the Ingrams, I think this got killed. I think Dr. Edwards was into this thought that, because we know that that Ma Ingram, Pat, she went home and she put it in the sink. She put the money bundle in the sink to try to separate the water, because she wanted to get it wet again to try to separate it. And she ran the sink water, and they kind of submerged it in sink water, and then they ended up putting fabric softener on it, of all things.
Right, and that seemed to separate the bills.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so I think that Bob Edwards did a thing where that the drinking water would have had diatoms in it at the time. I don't know about that, but I feel,
again, they found it in March, February.
So yeah, it would have winter.
So the drinking water has summer diatoms from the Columbia River.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying, right?
Yeah,
these aren't just diatoms. It's not just diatoms, yes or no. It's this particular, and that's why actually the scientific technique, the technique the Citizen Sleuths came up with is much better than a single marker. It's not one species, we found it or not. It's like the mix of species matches the season. So when you say, okay, the water came from drinking water in the Ingram's house or whatever, right? Are you telling me the Ingram's house not only has diatoms, but it has this specific mix of species that matches the Columbia River in May and June when it's so much harder. It's right. It's a dumb theory. So
it's it's jumping the shark.
That's the advantage of using a suite of diatoms instead of one species. It's like, all right, one thing could be wrong, but all the species are wrong. Come on, that's crazy. Let's say it takes a genius to fake that.
And Rose, the Ingrams lived in Vancouver, Rose, in southern Vancouver. They didn't live too far north of the river. And their rental home burned down a month later. They had a bad string of luck there.
Diatoms do need light to live, Steve. They are algae. They're photosynthetic.
Okay, so a well would not work when it's stagnant. I mean, in what water? Just stagnant water? I mean,
well, I mean, it depends on what a decent well is. You're talking about water that's been underground for like a long, long time
oh, right,
and passed through a lot
true.
of sediment. Now there are wells that are sort of poorly separated from surface water, but again.
Okay, so let's see. Cam says that Tom told me the diatoms in drinking water would be much smaller. I didn't realize that.
If there were any, and they would not. They'd be surface water. That would be evidence of surface water if you found diatoms in drinking water.
Okay. Okay. Well, so, but yeah, and that's is that your last slide?
This is the last. Oh, let's see. I think I had a. Well, there was. This was just to show the elevation of the water. In addition to the discharge, is a little bit obscure, but the water goes up from 5 feet to 15 plus. So there's a bunch of beach that goes underwater. Brian Ingram, and there's this. Oh, that's my last slide. Once again,
that's a cool picture there, though, because that does kind of look like what you see in the in the pictures of Tena Bar from the time period, right? Or like,
yeah, this is the best I come up with. And again, you can all drive out there. It's a pretty spot. It was chilly and windy, but
yeah. Let me see the I'm trying to upload. So I FOIA'd for these photographs. These photographs of Tena Bar that the FBI took that day, I was able to FOIA for them, and I got them. And I'm happy that I did because they're kind of cool photographs. Let me see if
when you say cool, you're obviously talking about Leonard Palmer.
Yeah, well, no, not pictures of Palmer though, but yeah, let's see. Where is the one? Let me see. So yeah, here's like one of the FBI photos. On the back of one of these, it says "stick in center of photo, location of recovered money." Okay, that's what they wrote that day. It's kind of cool to see what they wrote that day, you know.
Yeah.
And
stick in center of. So
which picture?
Help me out. Where's the stick
right
in
there.
center? Oh, there's the stick in center. Photo.
Yeah, but looking in the opposite directions. So basically, right behind them, right behind this photographer would be the crooked tree. You know, right behind his back of the photographer. Okay. So that's where that is.
Look at that. But is this after? Because look how. This is after they trash the beach. Because look at it. It's like a moonscape.
I don't know. Yeah, probably. You think so?
I do. This is 100% after. There's no way a beach looks this bumpy.
I mean, I don't know though, because there's photographs that have. I think this is the one. Maybe this is the one that has the FBI guys in it. There's a photograph that has. Yeah, we've got FBI guys on the beach.
All this, jumbled up rough sand. This is very, very recently disturbed. Like you can't leave sand in this condition. It would wind or rain or whatever would smooth it out. This is
bad, ugly.
This is actually somebody dug through it for sure.
Okay, all right. Well, then that makes
this kind of condition doesn't last. And even if you go you're at the beach next summer, at the shore, go in the morning, and everybody's sandcastle from yesterday is already smoothed out. Right? This is like they just stopped churning it up, or this is the next.
Okay. So
sand doesn't stay in this kind of.
So this is 20 people with shovels and rakes messing around with the beach.
Yeah, for sure. And you can actually see in this photo again, the very edge of the water off in the background, tide has come up and gone down, and it's very smooth. There's that dark band along the water's edge. That's where the tide, rose and fell a foot or whatever overnight, like it does, and it's back to completely smooth sand again. So this looks like they just got done churning through it, and somebody took a picture. Like, everyone get out of the way! I'm taking a picture.
But although this photo, that photo, that looks like they just arrived on the scene.
Although this looks like to me again, you can see all kinds of footprints and digging.
Yeah, but it's a little cleaner
just went
than
through
that.
Here.
Yeah, this is the Ingrams going through it, and this is rakes and shovels going through it. Essentially,
yeah, they went even more through it. They churned it up.
Yeah, because it's different color too. I mean, it's all.
Yeah, it is, and there's some.
So that's more pristine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it says right in the center of there is where they. Yeah, I mean, because you would think that surely, yeah, as soon as they showed up, that they had to take a photograph, of course. I mean, surely before they touched it, I would
You
think.
hope, and
I mean, you would think. I mean, but and in your opinion, this does look like people digging around with their hands
for
more
sure,
than.
the why is there that like pit in front of the tree, and there's a small pit maybe where they found that's because the Ingrams were pushing around looking for sand. Doesn't stay in this kind of condition very long.
Okay.
Cows don't dig. Also, cattle will like stomp all over. I've never seen cows like dig a hole. They'll just sort of stomp around. So this isn't cattle. This is people.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is
cool.
so. This is right. Here's Frenchman's Bar. You can see it's very smooth, right? Because the water is rising and falling here, and water smooths out the sand very quickly.
Okay, and I see there that on the discolored line there is the high tide line, right? That discolored on the right side.
That's a recent. My guess is way down next to the beach. There's a very smooth strip right along the water. That's the tidal range today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's only going up a foot or two. So there's this little strip, and then further up is some kind of recent high water mark. But way up the beach is probably like every year it gets way up the beach there. But last month or last week or whatever, it got up to that light line you're talking about.
I think this is the best Tena Bar photo. I really like that photograph there. That's a cool shot.
It's tricky to even understand what we're looking at, though.
Yeah. Well, let me see if I have the other. Well, that's another shot there, but that just kind of, I don't know what that's trying to illustrate. I'm not sure why that's relevant, but
that's some kind of split screen that's showing us a plant.
Yeah, on the bottom is
a
yeah. I'm not sure why I picked that, but I guess I was just trying to line up where it was. But yeah, that's a cool shot though. But yeah, it's interesting. Looking out, you can see. Yeah,
I guess I'm seeing in this photo, the upper left is the strut of the small airplane this was taken from.
Yes, it is. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, these are all basically where that arrow is right now is where Eric Eulis has been with his pickaxe hitting the rocks and breaking his finger when he fell down 2 years ago. But that's what it is now. I mean, it looks way different. Tena Bar is just, I mean, just so different now.
It's grown up. It's 50 years. Am I seeing a whole pile of cows over on the right hand side?
Yes.
Spread out in the field.
That's them. Yep, those are the cows.
Those are the steers that came and stomped.
And also, look, folks, I like this photograph too, because the idea they're like, oh, Cooper landed near there and buried the money there that night. I mean, come on. This is like, there's houses and shit there. I mean, this is not like isolated. Somebody could have been walking their dog. There.
No, it's right there. It's one of the few roads in this direction. It's a public road. It's only, I mean, it's half a mile away. There's a public road, and so, retro. I didn't. Winter of ice flows also knock the tree down. So no, not necessarily, because ice flows came up as high as the water level, and the fact there's a tree there indicates that's about where the water normally doesn't go, right? Because that tree has been there for whatever, pick a number, 10, 50 years, I don't know. Water doesn't go up there all the time because there wouldn't be a tree there. So the clean sandy beach indicates where the water normally goes. Once in a while, the water goes up and inundates those trees, but there's no. I've never seen any evidence or argument that ice flow in the winter was also a flood. So it would have been normal water level covered with ice, as opposed to exceptionally high water level with ice.
Right. Okay. Well, so basically, I mean, for people who are wondering, saying, why did Cooper put the money there years later? Well, we don't know if he put it there.
Put the money there.
Yeah. Cooper didn't.
Tina Mucklo was given $6,000, and then later on she panicked, and
yes.
That's right. She handed it to Flo, who mailed it later to Rackstraw, who buried it in the beach. Like, I mean, there's no explanation that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, and people are saying, why were the Ingrams there? It wasn't that cold. It was kind of an unseasonably warm day, and that's why they went, because these people were outdoorsmen and they went out.
Somebody at CooperCon came and said it's not uncommon, and I believe it. Like on a nice day in February, you've been
You
stuck.
don't get many of
The
those.
Pacific Northwest is dark. The sun comes up, and I don't care if it's 50.
Yeah,
Let's
you're
get
fine.
outside. I mean, my parents weren't outdoorsmen. My mother may be on here. She'll be like, I was an outdoorsman. No, but by February in the North or in the Pacific Northwest, it's a decent day. Get the kids. Like we're going out for a hike. We're going out for a picnic. We got to get out of this house because it's been dark and dreary way too long. Doesn't surprise me the least bit that you would be out on any kind of comfortable day. And comfortable has a different meaning if you're in the Seattle versus
Sure.
if you're from LA. Yeah, comfortable is 74. But if you're up there, I mean, it's 58 degrees and it's not too rainy. Let's get out.
Yeah, it's not too
Remember, there was no
crazy.
internet. There were no games for the kids. They were
Now,
bouncing off the walls, and so were
here's
you.
here's the question though. I mean, obviously it's human burial. I mean, almost certainly. I mean, that's one thing that when
That's
who
what I
knows,
think.
but
There's no plausible natural process that would explain money stacked up by itself in sand. That's not natural.
right. And staying put that way too. Staying put. Yeah, I don't yeah, I don't know. But and so now, but why somebody would bury money on a freaking beach? I mean, I'd be worried the money would get washed away or something. I mean, I guess it's easy
It
to bury
doesn't make
money.
any sense.
No,
If you were if I got to tell you, Ryan, and we've talked about this extensively. If we're going to commit some crimes and rob some banks, you're going to drop money from me on a beach, put it in a damn bag. Holy cow, man! I didn't not
yeah,
just like loose money in the sand with no. Help me out, brother. Like
I don't
a
makes no
plastic
sense.
bag would have gone a long way to preserving that money, but it
It's
doesn't make
almost
any
like
sense.
no. I mean, it's almost like a payment to an accomplice or something. It's like, okay, well, I'll put a
But
stick
what
there.
accomplice? That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. Like, put my payment in a paper bag at least, if not a plastic.
yeah.
Like, you're just bearing, unwrapped money in a beach as a payment. That seems like the worst payment I've ever heard
It
of.
just almost seems like this doesn't make any sense. And I mean, that's what I'm saying. There is no explanation for Tena Bar that matches the facts as we know them. It just doesn't
Okay,
work. I mean, there's no. Why would anyone
I
do
got a plan,
this?
Ryan. We're going to rob a bank, and in about 5 years, I want you to take some money and dunk it in the river, and then and then bury it. But don't wrap it up because they'll know it was you if you wrap it in a plastic bag, for crying out loud, and then bury it in the money, bury it in a bank, a public beach, preferably somewhere
Yeah.
other people could find. It doesn't make sense.
Now, GGX, this was kind of my theory this kind of the only theory that I've kind of like sort of decently like a little bit is that basically we know that Cooper was being generous. Okay. And for those listening on podcast, he says, Ryan, what if a local helped Cooper knowing he was a criminal and then just wanted to get rid of it? Yes, that could be. Because Cooper, we know Cooper was generous. So possibly, and again, this is like the most stupid brainstorm, but I mean, and Tom K agrees with me on this, that it's like the money is unrelated to Cooper. There was a superseding, to use a legal term, there was a superseding intervening force that separated Tena Bar from Cooper. I firmly believe that. I don't think Cooper. I think that if Cooper was still alive in 1980, he would go, "What the hell?" Like I bet he'd be like, "What?" I mean, because it almost seems like I could see a scenario where Cooper hitchhikes or something, and maybe leaves a bundle or some of the money for the kid who gave him a ride, and the kid finds it the next day and it's like, oh my god, but why the kid would go on a beach and I don't know.
Why bury it?
Why
Throw it
bury
in the
it?
river.
Throw it in the river, or I don't. Yeah, bizarre.
It doesn't make sense. That every explanation to me has a serious flaw. And why bury it in the river there? I mean, in the sand there.
I mean,
If you want to leave it as a clue, throw it on the beach. Don't bury it.
Don't bury it. Yeah, and people say Cooper wanted it to be found to let to throw the FBI off. The problem is, the drop zone was up near Lake Merwin. If Cooper wanted to make people think he died, he would have planted something on the shore of Lake Merwin and go, he's in the Cooper's in the lake or whatever, right? You wouldn't do so far away from the flight path. That wouldn't be a good decoy to throw the FBI off the sense.
It's almost like someone who didn't know the case.
True.
But again, I'm saying this and it already doesn't make sense. Someone who didn't know much about the case had some of the money, what, and then decided to throw the FBI off. Except the FBI wasn't on the case any. I mean, they were barely. By 9 years later, they were like they weren't hot in your tail anymore. It was like you got away with it. So
pretty much. I mean, yeah, they weren't going to find you after 5 years. I mean, they weren't going to find Cooper after a couple of years. I mean, they had a very. I think they knew that too. Yeah, Cam is saying that basically, if you bury money, without something wrapping it, it's not meant to be there for long. Or
honestly, Cam, if you're dropping money from me, man, put it in a bag. I don't care if it's meant to be for an hour. Put it in a bag. Like, what are you doing? That's the part that doesn't make sense. If you're giving it, like, wrap it in something. Don't just bury money almost loose in the sand. That seems like the worst possible way to hand money to somebody.
Yeah, and Jay, I agree. It's like if somebody made me be a conspiracy theorist on anything in this case, if I had to, like, in Bizarro Ryan, not a analytical person world, Bizarro world Ryan, that is the one thing that makes me go, because it's like, okay, that is a hell of a coincidence that Tena Bar and Tina Mucklo. Okay, that is. I mean, because again, if Alice had been, I always use this illustration. If Alice had been Cooper's go-between, and we found the Cooper money buried behind Alice's restaurant, we go, oh, it's a little on the nose, right? We would go, that might be more than a coincidence. And so I don't know. I like the way that Rob Bertrand, who we all know and love from the Vortex Experience, the escape room, he's also an author. He wrote a screenplay on Cooper, and he explained it just for cinematic purposes. He has Cooper telling Tina when he sends her away. This is the end of his screenplay, which is a really good screen. The screenplay won awards. It was just never picked up, but I've read it. And Cooper says goodbye to her and says, "Hey, look, one day I'll let you know that I lived." He goes, "One day I'll let you know that I lived, that I survived this thing. See ya." And the last scene of the movie is Tina at her convent outside or in Oregon watching TV, and it's Tena Bar, and she goes, "I'll be damned. He lived," So
that's as good as any theory that
it is. I mean, honest to God, it's Hollywoodish, but I mean, it's strange.
Everything else is just pure ridiculousness. So
yeah, I mean,
Hollywood
you're right.
is better than that.
I mean, because it does seem that it was done with intent. Okay, because if it was the college kid who gave him a ride, he's just chunking that thing out the window when he realizes what it is. I would. I'm not going to bury it. I just throw it out the window. Get rid of it. I mean, there's no reason. There's no reason to go down to the shore of a beach of a sand. I mean, so it was put there on purpose. They did. Augie. I mean, Augie's saying, why didn't the FBI interview everyone who frequented Tena Bar? They did. There's a lot of fishermen that they talked to, and a lot of news people talked to fishermen who were always there. And Tipper is an old guy who was always on that spot. Tipper actually taught Brian how to fish some stuff. He was an old guy. I have a photograph of Tipper somewhere. But Tipper was an old guy. He was a World War I veteran, actually. And he said, "I'm on this beach every day fishing in this spot. It was not here recently. It did not wash up on shore." He said that. He's like, I would have spotted it.
Right.
And because I see what's around me.
Again, washing up on shore doesn't bury it. So
that too.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah. And again, someone didn't bury it there that day because of the condition of the money. The condition of the money is terrible. So it's not like somebody just buried it that day. So that clearly is time. We don't know how much time it would take to destroy money to that extent, but more than a few days. I mean, obviously. But again, there's just so many variables for how money degrades. But I wish that there was more experimenting. But I guess the main thing that we've learned today, and Ron, the biggest takeaway that I take away from all of this, from your talks at CooperCon and then today, is just that money, and you laid it out very well. Money is not going to bury itself like that. It just isn't.
Right. The river didn't bury it like that.
It can't.
Somebody did.
Yeah, it just
Who?
can't.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the river.
I see. But yeah, I think we both kind of are tickled at the Tena Bar, Tena Mucklo thing because it's like, what else could I mean?
It's as sensible as anything. It's far fetched, but
it's far fetched. But I mean, what else are we talking about? Let's see. Where do they actually think he landed? Far away. I'll pull up my little
previously
graphic.
asked, no, walking out of the drop zone doesn't take you across Tena Bar. Like this was not a mistrip out.
No, absolutely not.
And it was hard to get to Tena Bar. So I don't know if you have a map, Ryan, but Tena Bar is actually separated from the drop zone by there's Vancouver Lake and it's called Lake River, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Tena Bar is like a peninsula that you almost have to go into Vancouver and get to. Although someone pointed out there may have been a bridge or may be a bridge.
Yeah,
across Lake River.
Yeah, there's a bridge. Yeah, I mean, the FBI. I don't have my little drop zone thing, but basically, this isn't going to help. What's helpful was, and you had a slide that was really helpful, actually. I thought. So yeah.
Keep going the other way.
Well, no, this is the one. This is actually a good one, but because that's my little.
Okay, this might be yours.
I mean, that's my little graphic there, but it was. Wait,
you're going the wrong way.
I'm going the wrong way. That's right. I'm going the wrong way. That's right. Where is it? You had one that was really good. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, to the question asked question, that the little yellow line sort of, I mean, basically kind of where that yellow line is.
23, the straight yellow line.
Yeah. What like but where the circled yellow line is basically is roughly kind of maybe a little north of there. I'm of the opinion it's a little north of there because I think he does jump at 8:11 currently. So
I was just picking out the times.
Sure. But yeah, but Tena Bar is way down there on the green where that little money dot is on the left side by the river. So that's it. I actually wrote this today because I'm doing a video on Tena Bar, and the drop zone is 8 miles east of Tena Bar, and it is 18 miles north of the Columbia River. So I mean, like, it's just not getting there.
Right. And so if you landed in that little, circle-ish oval thing, and you started walking directly towards Tena Bar, one of the problems is it's a little hard to see, but there's Lake River, which is southeast of that green dot. That's Vancouver Lake, right? It's a big lake.
Yeah.
There it is. And that thing has a river going from it running north. You have to cross that river.
Tena Bar is on. I mean, it's on an island technically. Like,
yeah, it's not like you just happened upon Tena Bar. You had to.
No,
there is a bridge across Lake River, but you had to know exactly where that is, and so now you're deliberately getting. You're not just accidentally getting to Tena Bar. Well, it's not convenient. It's not on your route anywhere. You're seeking it out. Which,
when again, look, I mean, there are buildings around there.
Yeah,
there's civilization. If you're gonna bury money, bury it somewhere else. Don't bury it so close to.
How do we know Tena Mucklo didn't bury it?
We don't.
We don't for sure, but I don't believe Tena Mucklo could have just walked off that plane with $6,000.
No, and I don't think he gave her $6,000. He gave her. She said that her words were he offered her a small packet of money, or a small package of a package. Is what she calls it, a small package. He gave her a pack. I mean, Cooper is not going to give her that. Cooper's not giving her a brick of $10,000. I mean, Cooper's pulling out one of the packets and giving it to her.
Yeah,
that's my thought.
Maybe
$2,000.
I always figured him offering the stewardesses money. My theory is it's like gamblers in Las Vegas, right? Any casino, right? So gamblers who hit it big, they're tipping the waitresses crazy amounts of money that they would never do in, normal circumstances or the next morning when they, even if they're not drunk, but kind of, sobered up from the excitement. But they hit it big and it's like, hey, everyone, everyone wins or whatever. I think, to me, Cooper was sure he could jump out of the plane. You're not going to plan this crime if you're not confident about the jump. That's the unique part of this crime. And I think he probably thought, once I jump out of that plane, I'm the best at this. No one can catch me. I'm going to hit that ground. There's no way, local sheriff's going to catch me. I'm home free. So once he got the money and he's in the air, He's like, I did it. They're not obviously going to gun me down. I'm jumping out of this plane. I'm home free. And it's like he's a gambler who won, right? Suddenly, I made it. Hey, you want some tips? Hey, like
Yeah.
it was all fun right then. And that,
Well,
to me,
although
that's what it was.
although he offers her the money though, although your timeline's off there, he offers her the money as soon as she brings the money to him, and he starts rifling through it. She says she makes a joke. She goes, "Hey, there's a lot of money in that bag. Can I have some?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." And he hands it to her.
Although
So.
I think even then he realized, I mean, by that time they didn't storm the plane.
Right. They're playing
Got
along.
the money. It looks like it's all working. I made it. Like whatever point in the crime he decided he made it, just past that, it was when he started like, hey, you want some money? Sure, here you go.
Right.
I'm home free.
Well, Flo says he was being very childish at the time. So, but
He was giddy.
He giddy. He's happy.
Made it.
And Matt,
I think once he jumped, he was happy. That was he felt he was safe.
Well, let's remember too that Cooper had no idea they would ever know where he jumped, because he did not anticipate the pressure bump giving him away. So, I mean, he thought they were going to land in Reno and they're going to go, oh shit, he could have jumped out anywhere between here and Reno, or between Seattle and Reno, right, which is what they did originally. They were like, well, maybe he did, but and
he was a jumper, and he just to me that was the signature part of this crime. He's good at jumping, and he probably thought he was the best at jumping. You can't catch me. I always like that. So I showed up, like I was telling you a story. I showed up at CooperCon knowing basically nothing about this. I asked my wife, like, we should take a trip. Where do you want to go? She's like, CooperCon. What? So I didn't know what that is. So the first presentation was on Ted Braden, who to me is a great suspect, except he doesn't look like Cooper, which just makes him a terrible suspect. But he jumped out of planes over and over in Laos and Vietnam. He was the kind of sort of outside the law kind of guy. He was breaking rules in the military, whatever he's doing. A guy like that, he thought once he has a parachute on his back and he's jumping, there's nobody better than I am at this, and I'm going to get away. And to me, that's why he gave the money away. Like, he's like, here it is. Now we're entering my world, where we take off in a plane and I jump out and you can't catch me, and the Viet Cong couldn't catch me any number of times, and there's no way. Right. Sheriff from Washington State.
And Matster is pointing out that Cooper did have access. It's true. Cooper did have access to her purse for a while. He says, but I imagine the FBI searched her purse. I doubt that. I highly doubt they did that. I highly doubt they did that. And no, I cannot imagine that they searched her purse. That's in 1971. I don't think so.
I just think it was a little bit more of a, I don't want to say gentleman's agreement. Like they just didn't do that. They had a little different sort of approach to things. Like, oh, she's clearly not the criminal. Like, they don't know. Now they would search her, but
and
they
now
just
they
assumed she was. And
yeah, I think that I wish I had the thing there.
So if he was a military guy, he would know about pressure spot. No, nobody knew. Nobody knew until they recreated the Cooper. This is the pressure bump was discovered in the recreation of the Cooper crime. Again, whatever that was in December of 71, a couple of days after the crime, but no one knew about it. That's why somebody was suggesting the pilots were in on it and the stewardess was in on it. And one of the reasons you can discount that is that the pilots reported this pressure bump, but nobody, including the pilots, knew the pressure bump existed until later. So how'd they fake that? Either they're mad geniuses or they weren't in on it and they were just reporting what they heard,
Yeah, that's what in fact in my video about whether the crew was in on it, I have a whole video about that. That actually is because the FBI actually did look into it, like, well, maybe the crew was in on it. And one of their reasoning was that was actually the FBI's reasoning. They said the pressure bump, they wouldn't have known to fake that. They would not have known to have done that. Because nobody knew that was going to happen, because no one had ever jumped out of a 727 with stairs. People who jumped out of 727s did so with the stairs removed. They had a ramp they slid down. So yeah, nobody knew about this, and it gave them away. And so I bet Cooper, like the next day, was like, "Oh hell, how'd they figure that out?" when he realized, yes, the FBI did tell the flight crews of the copycats to be alert for pressure bumps, and sure enough, every copycat caused a pressure bump. I mean, there's cool quotes from the pilots that are in the newspapers of all those copycats saying, "Oh yeah, we felt like a champagne cork going off popping," you know. So it's kind of neat that it is what it's going to happen.
Am I the only one that thinks that jumping out of a 727 with a slide just sounds super fun?
Yeah, it does. Woo! Yeah, because it's all the other. I mean, there's videos of those guys, you know, going out. In fact, I think I actually have. I usually have the video of. Oh hell! Is this it? Yeah. Look, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, you'll see the guys going out.
The money was buried outside the currently visible tide line.
So look here. Here we go. We're gonna have some guys coming out of a slide. Here they go. Whee!
Oh, that looks like a hoot. Yeah.
Woo!
Next time I jump out of a jumbo jet, I'm going to try to do it that way.
Yeah.
So someone asked, is about where is this comment? Was the money buried above the tide line? So I can't find that comment right now, but it's scrolled up my screen. But
where'd it go?
Not too far back here. It's anyway. Yes. There's there's a daily tide line, which is only a foot or two high in the Columbia, but like whatever the water level is, it's going up and down a foot or two twice a day. But there's a seasonal tide line, which, like I was showing, goes up and down, 10 feet or more. So you could be 10 feet above water level, which would put you 50 or 80 feet from water at times. On the beach, it seems like you're on a dry beach, but that spring flood comes and you're underwater now, right? Right. So they're absolutely, and aren't hydrologists or don't go out. The fishermen all knew this too, but like you go out there on a given day in November when you're bearing the money, maybe after you just hijacked a plane, which I don't think happened, but anyway, you look like you're way far away from water, right? And and you are today, but May and June comes and that's going to be underwater. So I think the whole area that's loose, bare sand, that's beach. It's beach because at certain times of the year it's underwater, and people sort of don't realize that, but that's where you'd bury money because there's no trees and plants and roots and stuff to make it hard to bury.
Right. Okay. Somebody's saying, Ryan, I think someone referred to the flight attendants as waitresses. Can you please explain to them the difference? I mean, they're not waitresses. No, they're trained differently, but yeah, I mean, they're not waitresses, but I mean, they have additional training for emergencies and things like that. Ryan, who drove the money to the plane, that would be Al Lee. Well, Owen McKenna, a homicide detective, actually drove the car. It was a Dodge Dart, a undercover Seattle PD car, but he had Al Lee with him, who was the chief pilot from Northwest, who was the guy who actually stood outside the plane doing all that stuff. So anyways.
Dodge Dart. I love it.
Yeah, a crummy Dodge Dart. But at any rate, all right, folks. Well, 2.5 hours, and I'm going to thank Ron for enlightening us on this. Well, causing more confusion, but I will say that the main point, though, that Ron did was the no natural burial, and that makes sense, and that's I think that certainly changes some things. I mean, it still doesn't help us at all, but it's good.
My wife's always like, "Well, who did it and why?" I don't know who did it. I don't know why, but if the river did it, you would see evidence, and that's just not there. The river didn't do it.
Well, that's the last word. So, all right, folks. Well, Ron, thank you, man. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Then,
all right,
like and subscribe. Everyone. Bye.